share, you can share data with your supply chain, all the things you want to do. There's nothing, we're not going to share like your school data, so there'll be a day when cyber service come to your actual school district and complete the process, and you walk out after this whole, through the tunnel with the team, and then you'll say, my school is NIST compliant. Has that stuff happened before? Yeah, they had this thing called OSHA with safety, and there was time in the world when nobody was OSHA compliant. Well, now you go to every major organization and they have safety programs and all these different types of things. So cyber is just in a long series of technologies and operations areas that now this is the moment in time where Ohio feels that we can be the leader in the country and do that. How did schools get to be first? You got me. Schools, we didn't start out with schools first. We started out with city governments and county government, stuff like that. But all of a sudden, about almost 2 years ago, we did our first school. And then from there, it just proliferated. And so schools, I think we're up to about 350 schools out of the 700 districts. And so we're working with 14 of the 17 ITCs. We'll eventually work with all the ITCs, 17 of them in Ohio. And so that's how we're talking to you. We work through the ITCs, and then later on, because you're going to hear it, starting in 24, they're going to, state of Ohio will do the same thing with their EMA directors, and the EMA director will send letters out to everybody in the county saying, this is what we're doing with critical infrastructure. And then, but all the schools in Ohio are going to say, which we will tell them, you're done. You're done. You're the pilot. The schools ended up in Ohio being the pilot program. So congratulations for that. Yeah, you can give yourself. Yeah. Woo. All right. I'm the standards officer. So I work at battalion level. So Cyber Reserve is a military unit in the Adjutant General Department. And the reason 2 other states had this concept in the United States, but we're the very first cyber reserve in the United States in Ohio. And you're going to hear a lot of other things that we're first of. We have a cool cyber range, go to another state where you practice cyber attacks and such like that. We can do training on. And so that's available to all of you, even right now, if you decide you want to get on. But as you can see up there, I'm getting close to 50 years doing engineering. And I would be considered to be like, and it's just what it is. So I've taken 3 different industries through from being analog to digital. I was in a CAV squadron back in the 70s. Platoon sergeant said, hey, come in. We need automated software to do artillery. Done in 30 days. Okay. Me and one other individual, and then field tested it. I think we, at that time, became like one of the youngest academy instructors because they said, well, you invented the system, now you got to go out and teach it. So I was a PFC when I got academy certified. So I've been teaching for, you can see, a gazillion years. Mostly in the military, but also at college level. Written probably about 35 engineering books, about 450 pages, so a lot of writing. I think I did about half the airfields in the United States. When I first started working on airfields in the United States after leaving nuclear at Siemens, there's 150, 125 major airfields in the United States. When I first showed up, the most sophisticated thing that seemed to have was a windsock and a rotating beacon. In fact, I went by this airfield that's right here when I came into town. Not much technology, but you go in there, and I knew what the goal was because I was the head designer at Siemens. And so developed just tons of computer related systems so that when you go out there and you land safely. And since the 80s, since all those airfields have been, does anybody know how many carrier crashes we've had since the 80s? Yeah, it's 0. It's 0. I'll write that on the board. So if we learned that lesson doing breaches, in the FAA. And all it was, hey, we got some common rules, we're all gonna work by those rules, we're gonna use skilled people. And we're going to use software system, you know. But people will sit there and go like, because there's some little airport type things. People always walk up to me and say, well, we can do it. I go like, well, you know, kind of funny because we are doing it. So the thing is that are there some small airfields that have some mishaps? Yes, but for major carriers since the mid-80s, there's been nothing. I can tell you why, because when I used to go up at the tower, and it sounded like an auctioneer just rounding off who's going to land. It's not like that today. It's all very scientific. So you have to, I will tell you, just like we do in cyber, if all you're relying is on one layer of defense, kind of you're talking to a guy who is commanded infantry and armor companies in the U.S. military. If you just rely on one thing, you're going to lose. That's the way it is. There's nothing better I can say about it. But if you do that multi-layer defense, which we're going to look at over the next 5 seminars, which are really easy. Everything I'm going to tell you, and I'll convince you that it's going to be easy. Everybody sits there in the cyber industry. I go to seminars, Gardner seminars down in Florida, all that kind of stuff, and they'll convince you that's hard and it's expensive. It's hard and expensive. I sit there and go like, based upon what? I guess it's hard and expensive based upon your perspective. It's hard to do individually. But every time we get together in a seminar, there's probably between the people online and people here, we're probably talking about 60 people. So if you're together, working together at 60, how is that hard? Because if you don't know, you just call a friend, ask a friend. So everything we're going to do together with the ITC, you know, they're always going to take the lead. We're going to have a seminar. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. It's always going to be as a team. If you want to be miserable, just go home, open up a 500-page or 1,200-page cybersecurity book, and just sit there and try to start doing it on your own. Yeah. Not that huge. Somebody can send me an email. Tell me how that's working out. Okay, so you got to go in. And so what kind of outcome we seeing in Ohio? The rest of the world takes anywhere from 2 to 3 years to get cyber compliant per organization. In Ohio right now, with 350 organizations, we're down to almost 90 to 100 days. Same standard. And if you go in and you look on the slide, you sit there and go like, well, what compliance standard does Charles not chief compliance officer do? Well, there aren't very many left on there. Okay, so when you sit there and say, well, Charles, do you know anything about HIPAA? Yep. You know anything about this? Yep. All 3 flavors. You know, but I'd be willing, you know, send me an email. Say, Charles, you know something about this? But, you know, I want to build something that goes to Mars. Well, I don't know about the Martian cybersecurity requirements yet, but you know, maybe I know how to call them up and ask them. Okay. So the thing is that in the cyber reserve, you think this is cool. In the cyber reserve, yeah, half the cyber reservists of the 200 have master's degrees in cybersecurity. 12 of them have PhD. So if you give me a really hard question, all I'm going to do is call a friend. If you sit there and say, I don't know how to figure this out, I'm going to call a friend. And then I'm going to sit there in the next 24 hours, give you a process and tell you exactly how you fix your problem. 99% of the time, it isn't going to cost you a dime. It's about education. If you're willing to go in and pull in a whole bunch of students in your school districts and teach them the same thing, you know, my only thing I always see, if you hang around me long enough, you'll sit there and you'll say, if I'm going to show you a whole bunch of stuff and you're going to make $200,000 a year doing it, then, you know, at least you can send me a Christmas card. You know, so you remember this, but it is not about me. It's not about the cyber reserve. It's about you learning the information and going back into your area of Ohio and then applying it. If you get stuck, what's the first thing you're going to do? Home, right? If you get stuck, you call up your favorite cyber reservist and then we'll get you. Call Jerry. Jerry will call me. or call somebody on the list. So our three missions that we do in the Cyber Reserve, if you go and you pull up the law in Ohio, when I'm not writing books and stuff like that, I've worked on all the different cyber laws in Ohio. I'll review them for them. It's like, you know, it's not the most exciting life. Just remember, I said that when you get gray hair and then they ask you to review the next cyber law in the year 2200 or whatever, then the thing is that somebody's got to do it. So you have to go in. Cyber Reserve by law has to assist you. The critical infrastructure. We have to educate you, and then if that fails, guess what we get to do? The last one, incident response. So every time you read about a breach in Ohio, and Ohio sends out forces, those are individuals in the Cyber Reserve. They're just like the fire department. There's nearly 200 of them. They're trained in teams, all three. We have a Cincinnati in the Southern Strike, Central Ohio, and then we have Cleveland. We have 3 stripes. Eventually, we'll be broken into 7 as we keep on growing. Be 450 in a regiment. Already started looking at a brigade. So it'll just get bigger based upon the needs of the community. So we go out, we do assist missions. This training that we're going through today, its whole focus, even though we're doing education, is to get you to where down the road on whatever day, when you finish your 5 seminars, you have all your evidence, you're applying what you learn, and then you say, I'm ready for you to come in. You call Jerry, call Charles, call Colonel Baker, say, we're ready for a 2 or 3 person team to come to your school district, and we will complete your gap analysis and then take you through to where you're NIST compliant. Pretty simple. 108 controls. If you did 1 a day for 108 days, you'd be all done. Incident response is bad. I will just tell you, there's nothing, why you switch that slide there, there's nothing good about incident response. There's nothing. There's nothing. When we come to your school, if there's an incident, which a lot of you, how many people have probably less than 5 or 10 people at their school that they can depend on if they get hit with a breach? They're going to, in other words, you're going to call the Cyber Reserve. It's a 10-person team. Real simple thing. If I was typing right now, I'd say, how do I get the Cyber Reserve if something happens at my school? 10-person team. You call your EMA director. They will quickly talk to and there's a process in the handout for that process, and we go through it again. Call your EMA director. I don't know what your EMA director in your county's name, but it's just like if you have a tornado, is you call the EMA director and say, I have an emergency. I have a cyber emergency. They'll say, I guess you're going to be asking for the Cyber Reserve. You say, yes, that's what I'm asking. But things are bad here right now. Your EMA director contacts the state EMA that's right next to the Beaver compound for the National Guard and the Naval Reserve and us and all that. They're going to contact Colonel Baker. Colonel Baker is going to have a team. Typically, within 24 hours, less than 24 hours, there's a team, that 10-person team. They are going to be with you for the duration. They're not going to run your network. They're going to come in. So a lot of things that we're going to do, they're going to come in and assist you to recover your school district. Does anybody know how much that costs? It's the same as what Jerry charged you for this seminar. We can say it out loud. It's 0. I know I have a treasurer sitting right here. It's 0. There is no charge for that level of support. Not every state, in fact, 49 states don't have a cyber reserve. So in Indiana, I don't know what their plan is. I get to talk to people from Indiana, people from all other 49 states. I was with a group from South Carolina, and they're like, hey, in South Carolina, we're 7 years behind you guys in Ohio. And I sit there and go, like, 7 years behind? To me, that's like being like, does that mean I'm like a Stone Age person? Because 7 years means like colonial pipelining experience. Everybody in the community lines up. People are in anguish. Things are bad. It's like being in New Orleans during when Katrina was there. Things are bad. Bad. I mean, BAD, bad. In Ohio, we have a system. And sometimes you have to pinch yourself because they're like, Charles is from the government. Because, you know, the jokes about the government is what, they're there just to tax me and do stuff like that. I will tell you, when it comes to cyber, Ohio is leading the way, leading. Now, how many times do you hear about that in the government? It's not, it's just not something you hear every day. But the state government decided, hey, we're going to get ahead of this issue in the state of Ohio. The only thing is you have to collaborate, because I'll have somebody say, like, what law is forcing us to do this? I have the answer for that too. But the thing is that Ohio is not like New York, who has a law that says that everybody has to be compliant. In Ohio, we have the cyber reserve, we have the cyber range, we have the regional programming center, we have OPCI, which are all positive ways, without getting in your face, to say, we need to do this as a team. We need to protect data as a team. And schools, that the press conference in Akron and European and Asian press was there asking questions, like, you guys are genius for picking schools first. I go, like, we didn't do it. Collaboration forced us down this lane. We found out in the cyber reserve that schools collaborate more than any other organization, industry in Ohio. But you guys already knew that. All you have to do is go to a lawyer's meeting or some other kind of meeting with some other industry, and you can realize how they really don't share information, but you guys do. So we're building to 450. We're teaching cybersecurity framework. There's only 108 controls. You can do it. 108. It's not that hard. If Charles can do it, anybody can do it. All right. Okay. You have to go in and sit there. The same kind of things that you do when you tell your kids that they need to come out and do their homework, all the way up to, hey, son, or hey, daughter, you can go and pass through this college. I'm not saying it's all a merry trip. I'm just saying it's when you get done, you're going to say to your friends, I didn't realize it was going to go this fast. It's all logical. There's no guesswork. It's all straight up. If you get breached, I could walk into your school district right now and guess what is the server that you're going to get breached on, or who in what department is going to be the person that clicks on the phishing email that causes the breach. I can probably look at it just like looking at the data. I'm a matter of fact type of engineer type of guy. I look at the data and say, there's your weak spot right there. But the question is, you probably say, hey, Charles, I knew that was my weak spot too. My question is, what were you doing about it? So you needed somebody in the red shirt to show up to tell you, hey, you got a problem right there. That's fine. That's fine with me. It's the magic of the red shirt. Okay, cool. We talked about the cyber reservist. This is what it takes to be a cyber reservist. You have to have 4 years working in the cybersecurity profession. They take OHCR and SANS exams. Taking a SANS exam is like studying for a law exam, bar exam. It's just, there's nothing fun about it. It's just a bunch of questions. You have to know how to answer the questions. We go through a 5-person review panel. They do background checks. Then we go through background checks every 2 years. So every 24 months, we're recertified for background. We're sworn in by field grade military officers. We're under the uniform right now in uniform under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, which is not civilian law. So if I said, if you showed me something about your school district and I shared it out there, there would be nothing but bad things happening to Charles. Okay. All right. So when you show a cyber reservist something, they're just, even though we wear a red shirt, every other forces, high defense force wears some other type of military uniform. This is our uniform. And it's a way we can mix in without looking like we're, wearing BDs or something like that. We sign NDAs with your group. Now they have an NDA in their personnel file, but we sign an NDA and an MOA with each when we work with you, just so that the legal people in your school district or private organization knows that, hey, we're, everything is on the up and up. Honestly, you can tell a cyber reservist again anything, they are bound. It's like when you go on a mission and somebody comes back this is education mission, but if we're on an assist mission or an response, somebody says to you like, hey, what mission were you on? You go, yep. What part of Ohio were you in? Yep. When we cut orders and it goes to their work employers, it doesn't have where they went. It doesn't even have the name of the city on the order. So the HR says, well, you're going to go somewhere in Ohio. Yes, I'm going to be somewhere in Ohio. Doesn't say on the order. Yeah, that's right. Any other questions? That's how secret it is. Nobody says. So if we have an incident response team at a school district, we're not going to sit there and say, hey, we're at OME-RESA, and it'll be in a seminar. It's like, oh, we were there. So we go to other ones where ITCs or people in the school, we see them, we've been there. We never go and sit there and say, hey, we were at that school district last week. That is a foul. We can say we were at an education seminar, that's good. But once we start looking at your data, it's all private information. This is what it looks like when we're working together, getting ready for a mission. We do more, we're kind of like the old reserve system. We do more work after 6 o'clock. So a typical cyber reservist is on a call. It's like late in the evening. They have a regular job. Most of them have regular jobs. They're cybersecurity people, so they tend to work for government or big industry. And then in the evening time, maybe Tuesday night is when their team's doing something. But we're not like an infantry or an armor company that you'll see training on Saturday and Sunday. We do typically in the region train on one Saturday, but I would say not every cyber reservist. Something more at SANS training. Found out a team the other day is headed to Texas for some training. So they do a lot of training. And once they get in a certain pocket and their team does stuff. So it's very non-traditional. I always equate it to like special forces, cyber reserve, I told that to General Bartman. Cyber reserve is as close to special forces. It's harder to get in the cyber reserve than it is to join the U.S. Special Forces. But once you're in, and people sit there and you're like, well, what's it hard to do? I said, well, yeah, if you got 4 or 5 years, every single one of you could probably qualify to be in it. You might not get the best scores. We don't have like certain scores you have to get on your SANS exam. We just use the SANS exam to put you into training to where we think you should be at. So if you had somebody in your department or family member who is interested in outstanding cyber training and they want to have like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have the most exciting career in my entire life. So that's what it would be. Because everything in the world today is about cyber. I mean, we love technology in the United States, but without cyber defenses, you might as well just lay down and say, oh, whether it's this month, next year, it's just a matter of time before you get hit. Anyway, it looks pretty comfortable. They actually feed you. Every once in a while I'm on a mission and I forget to bring snacks. That's on me. Just, you have to use checklists, just like in every other industry. Just don't forget if you're a cyber reservist, you gotta have snacks because sometimes you're longer on site than what you think you're gonna be. We already talked about the NDAs. So the only reason I can do these slides is the first time we meet together, you won't see these slides again unless you want to watch the video or something like that. But yes, you can actually see in this shot, there's a woman, we have about 10% women in the cyber reserve. Should there be, if there's 200 cyber reservists, should there be 200 women and 200 guys, or if there's 200 cyber reservists, it should be 100 and 100, the answer is yes. It should be, just like if you looked at Ohio, the cyber reserve should reflect the local landscape. If you just got there, cyber in Ohio is such a big career right now. You just would not believe it. Individual will join cyber reserve after they get out of college. And then we have so many managers in the cyber reserve that manage at large corporations. It's just like I watch them get hired and move over to this company because they'll typically get kind of a starter type of job. And then they're moving up. They're moving up. You can go to private industry, you will not match the training. You will, even private industry will never match the training that's going to happen in the cyber reserve. And you'll see that when you start working. Because you'll ask them, you'll sit there and say, Charles told me I could ask you any question. And you'll be doing that. When we do the planning with your school district, we'll do the MOA, NDA. We'll go through a menu of services, but the Neola, how many school districts are with Neola right now for their policies? Neola has already said, hey, they want to do core 1.1. Sometime next year, it'll go to core 2.0. They already have the review out. So if you don't have anything to do this Christmas, you can review the NIST 2.0. And because it's out for comment right now till December. We will yes, there's a list of documents. That's what these seminars are for. All this stuff below, the documents, the dates, and all that kind of stuff like that, that's all going to come up in these seminars. So it's going to we're making it as easy as you could ever make this whole process. There are different flavors in this. The one we're doing in schools is 1.1. 853s is designed for cities and municipalities. It's big. It has 1,005 controls. I didn't write that down because I thought if you saw 1,005 controls, any sane person would run from the room. I was not on that committee at the federal level. The 853 is real close to the Department of Defense and universities. 800-171 has 112 controls. It's just that they tended to want to be a little bit more talkative in 853. You can cheer that your school district will never do 853 ever. And so that's good news. A realistic set of data controls is in the 120. I believe ISO 27001 over Europe for all your European friends and Asian friends. It's 110 controls. You can do hybrid. Because in the United States, if you haven't figured it out, everybody tends to do it your way. So you can actually pull from the different standards because you might read something, might have a strength area in the air, and so you can do a hybrid mixture if you wanted to. Would I do it? Well, but down the road, who knows? I might be meeting the next Einstein in Ohio for cybersecurity, and you have an idea where you see something in one standard and you want to mix it into your core 1.1, and we will follow your lead on that. When we get done with the gap analysis, after we're done with the seminars and we do your school district, then what will happen is we give you a report called a POAM, which is basically a project list with your biggest threat at the top and your least threats at the bottom. And we stay with your school district until all your dangers and high risks are gone. And that's why we're with you for about 90 to 100 days. It varies with school districts, but we will never leave you where you have, because it's color coded, the red and the orange on your gap analysis. We will stay until all your red and orange are gone. Then we will say the statement works for you. What day would you like us to come back next year? Just come for like half a day with a couple of individuals, do a checkup, and we will ask you if you would like to do a checkup every year that going forward. And that just gives your school district, and if your legal person was sitting next to your superintendent or treasurer, it gives you at no cost a way to go in and say, hey, I'm sustaining where I need to be. Pretty easy. They do it at OSHA. They have individuals come in. They do that kind of stuff all the time. We do rehearsals. We're a pretty formal organization. We look at in our pre-assessment. When we look at a school district, we look at everything. We look at your website. We look at social media. There isn't anything when it comes to technology that we won't look at. And because if we have a 3 to 4 person team that you'll meet through these seminars and stuff like that, it's going to be such a rarity that when you have overlap, we talked about the John Kindergarten Zero Trust. If you're doing these things like seminar 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, on-site visit, we get to see enough of each other to where it's going to be just the probability of us missing something is going to be pretty darn hard. Is that good? Now, you would sit there, perception, because if you ever went through an IRS audit, when I was commanding M110 companies, I used to have individuals from the GAO, General Accounting Office, come down. They would never smile about it. They wouldn't all, you know, I offer them a cup of coffee. No, I can't have a cup of coffee because, you know, if you offer a GAO employee a cup of coffee, that's what they consider that a bribe. They are as serious auditors as you ever see. The Cyber Reserve is the friendliest group. We're the friendliest group you will ever meet. Friendly. Easy going. You can tell us stuff. We'll send stuff out. It is not uncommon when we're working with you that all of a sudden we're there checking something like a server. And then we see, hey, there's not a process, and we'll put on our other hat and go from assist to educate. And then we'll be back to, you know, sometimes it's dizzying to watch it. But if we can write the process for you, they get that in their training all the time. If we can write the process in the next 5 minutes and give it to you, or download the process and give it to you and say, this is your fix. And that's what we're going to write in the report. We're not going to write down your server or your frame firewall was messed up. We're going to say, oh, well, would you do this fix today? And they'll say, yeah, and we'll write down at the end of today, this is fixed. Well, what's the point about the history lesson of that was wrong before? We don't care that it was wrong before. Going forward, it's now configured properly. Now, all of you are going to have that same level of superpowers because you have a whole bunch of years of experience. If I went around and wrote down all the years of experience that are in the room and online, there's lots of years of experience. Once you start to go in and fix things at your school district, there will be ways through your ITCs that you guys will have some closed meetings and you guys will cross level and you continue to get stronger. You go past the core, and then the region gets stronger. The team gets stronger. Okay, cool. This has already worked because we used to do a lot of, you know, maybe 4 incident responses in 1 year, you know, which, I mean, that's pretty good for a state. But the thing is each successive year in the cities where the incident response teams are now set, because after today, you're going to list out who's on your incident response team. It is not uncommon in Ohio that your incident response team going forward with just a little bit of support will go in and solve all your problems. And then we just are in the background. So it's all going to be so cool. If we wonder like, why didn't you show up earlier? Here are the 5 seminars. We're in incident response today in tabletop. The tabletop is exciting and fun. Where we work in groups. Then we go to risk management. Risk management gets such a bum rap that they'll go in and say, well, why do I have to do risk management? That's something that the executives have to do. Risk management lists all the threats that are going to come in, the obvious school ones that are coming into a school. And in there, we are going to write down what are mitigations. We're going to measure the risk, do a standard by the book, ISO 27005, and this 830 report. But when you get over to column, I believe it's G, you'll go in and you'll see that we're going to come up with a mitigation. The mitigation belongs to your incident response plan. It's like, here's the threat, and here's my fix. Then you go down to the next one. Here's my next threat, and here's my fix. And you'd be wondering, like, why didn't you have that before? Now, does everybody, you know, you don't have to raise your hand. Everybody already has all their threats identified and all their mitigations all written out. And, you know, hey, I don't need to do this response plan because I already got all my threats listed and I already have all my mitigations already done. Yeah. Because you're waiting for the whole team to show up. You'd have done it because it's been on the internet for a decade. But the thing is, doing it as a team is our second one, risk management. And so it's a fun exercise, 3 hours. It's a little bit long, but we go through each risk and we come up with the mitigation. Next one is a very cool one. It's really, we depend on the ITCs, but how we do vulnerability management. Your ITCs is doing a lot of that. So we're going to cover that. Access control and vendor control. Access control is not just you and your students and your teachers, but it's also your vendors. And then the last one is network system control. You in those 5 seminars will complete 85 to 90% of everything you need to do to be NIST compliant. This is the last 10%. That's going to be where we accomplish it and come into your school district and finish the last part. Total number of hours in contact, 15 and 10, 25 hours and 25 hours. Because I just gave the report to the colonel the other day, 25 hours, I will get to, 3 times 5. And then 10 hours with us being at, 2 cyber reservists, 3 cyber reservists at your facility for a few hours, and then we will be done. Pretty darn cool. Pretty cool. At the time, when we're hit in December 25 and we're done with all the counties, Ohio will have the highest density of cybersecurity professionals in all of the planet Earth. The density of cybersecurity professionals per capita, per square mile will be higher in Ohio than anywhere else on the planet. There will be 14,500 incident response teams. 3 years ago, does anybody want to know how many response teams we had in the entire state? Less than 10. Between public and private. So we're growing, we're going to grow, and you could do it. Anybody could figure out how to make this last for 6 to 10 years, but why would you do that? I mean, that's insane. Here's how the controls work out. You have, if you're familiar with the core 1.1, it has 5 areas. In 2.0, they're going to add a 6th one called governance. So they're going to add a 6th column starting sometime in 24 when this release that. And so you have identify, protect, detect, respond, recover. You can see the number of controls. You can see the classes and how we match up the controls or seminars against the framework. Basically, every time you come to a seminar, you knock out roughly 20% of the standard. All of the team. If nobody showed up, if I was the only person in this room and you showed up and everybody was playing hooky that day, I would play hooky that day too. Yeah, I'll come back when the whole team's here. This is a team sport. It's a team sport. Doing it by yourself. I mean, unless you like to read 1,500-page technical manuals. Has anybody ever downloaded the CIS manuals for configuring a server? Come on, somebody. Do I have a server configuration person here? There's a manual under CIS for every type of server on how to configure it properly. And it's roughly 1,000 pages. So my question is to you, would you rather have the cyber reservists read the 1,000-page manual and come out with a 2-page configuration checklist, or do you want to read the 1,000-page CIS controls on how to set up a 20-nation server?
Well, that's 1,000 pages of fun.
Oh yeah. Jerry says maybe we can give like a pizza card. It's like, whoever can show us that they can read the 1,000-page CIS manual on server configuration, But I have cyber reservists. I go like, have you read that whole thing? And they go like, yeah, and they're like so happy. Yeah, I read that. That's what I do for fun. I go like, well, you're on the server configuration team, and there are people like that in Ohio. Come on, people have family members. How many people have a super nerd in their family somewhere or friend in their neighborhood? Yeah. So if you have those individuals, we just want to say, go team, go. And then they can show us, that they can configure the servers correctly. Here's the famous colors. When you get your gap analysis, you get the red, orange, yellow, blue, and green. Does anybody want to guess how long you get us at the Cyber Reserve? What colors will you have and when we disappear? Yeah, shout out. You're gonna have green, you're gonna have blue, you're gonna have yellow. But if you have red or orange, you got us. Got us for as long as you need us. How much does it cost? I'm going to pick up my score treasurer. How much is it going to cost the school? Zero. So doing shout out during training is where you want to be at, because people are going to ask you when you need this. This is seminar 1. So you're going to have also all these kind of questions like, what's this like? How miserable are you going to be? Well, Carl says if I come to a seminar and I'm the only one there, turn around at the door. Go home, go back home. This is a team sport. If Jerry's not even here and you just see Charles, could you imagine having to work with me one-on-one? Could you imagine? Yeah, yeah. If you don't believe me, I'll give you a couple engineers you can call. It's terrible. You know, I like technology. I'm like one of those individuals that would read the 1,000-page book and then do the checklist and all that. Because over the years, like landing airplanes, somebody in the United States has to do that. And if you like to do it, that's great. But in a team, we find out who the specialists are and we ask the team to pull together. Just like on a football team, not everybody's a wide receiver, not everybody's a quarterback. Everybody's playing the part that they want to play. Some people are on the sidelines just cheering. Everybody has a place to be on the team. There isn't anybody. And then when you go back to your school district, how many at your school district, when you're talking to your teachers, can the teachers be on your team? I didn't hear that. Can the teachers be on your team? Yes. Yeah. The jobs you're going to find out when we get to the other training is they need to be the ones that teach the students how to do things properly. Who's going to give them a checklist of what they need to tell the students? Probably the technology group. You say, hey, this is what I need you to train them in order to do this correctly. But you need the teachers, unless you want to go out to every single class. Oh my gosh, that's all I'd have to say is, oh my gosh. And we do instant response training. The reason I put this one in there is because there was 2 women sitting next to each other at one of our major annual training exercises. And I was like, man, I got to use this picture. Because people always saying like, there's not enough women in cyber reserve. Hopefully you and the school districts will help us out with that. Tell women that throughout their career, does a cyber reservist ever have to leave? Let's say that I'm not going to be, and you can kick me if you want. But as a woman is deciding what they want to do in life, and there's different things because the way they have goals and such like that, much harder than maybe a male. And you can kick me for saying that out loud. But a woman who picks cyber security, you could be anywhere to do cybersecurity and have a career. You do not have to be like driving a bus. You don't have to be in the factory. You don't. So wherever that person's lifestyle, and men are like the way too today, is that where can you be a cyber reservist at? Where can you be a cyber professional at? Anywhere. All you got to do is have a computer. You do not have to be in the building to do instant response. Okay, you can be on a terminal that's connected. Now, maybe somebody had to go there and put a tap in, but we can figure that out. Okay, so we just need to see where women can play a bigger part in cybersecurity. How many people know in this room who the first programmers were in the United States? University of Pennsylvania, 1944 to 1946. The ENIAC, the first computer. How many women programmers versus men programmers? All the women were programmers. How many people, when you see your teachers teaching computers, already know that programming is an invention of women. It has no men in the very first 2 years of programming being invented. So I've used that to my advantage because when I said there that I can't understand this to my wife, I said that I don't know what they want to do in this programming function. I said, well, it was invented by a woman and I don't understand. That's a joke. But the whole point is that women invented software in the United States. If you watch the Turing movie, like with not the ENIAC, but the Enigma machine, so the Turing machine, and then all of a sudden, because they couldn't send him, he wanted guys, but they sent him women because the guy, they didn't have enough men over in England. And so what did Turing find out? Obviously, you guys don't watch the really cool technology movies and stuff like that, but it was in Hollywood, came out, but they found out that the women were the best at solving problems on the Enigma. It was just, and he didn't know that, but then after that, he changed his mind today to send me women and I can go and create them to be analysts. It's just how problem solving is done. I'm not saying a guy can't become an analyst. I've worked with tons of men analysts. It's just that women can be in technology and do better than the guys. It's just that I don't think we say it enough in the United States. women created software. The whole concept of software is a woman invention. If you can't believe me, look it up, read the book. And then how did they get kicked? Oh, well, you know, all the guys came back from World War II and asked the women to get out of the way. And then ever since then, we've been getting breached. I know it's a joke. So the thing is that women were there at the beginning. We need women in cybersecurity throughout and technology throughout Ohio, and they have the history that they can do it. Cybersecurity, has anybody ever seen this slide here on the Cyber Club? I'm required every time to put that in a presentation. It's Ohio Department of Education, which I'm not exactly sure if that's actually what they're called anymore. Because they realigned the Ohio Department of Education into a different kind of thing, but they still have Cyber Club toolkits. You can go to your superintendent after today and say, Charles talked about cyber clubs. You can start a cyber club at your school district. You have clubs for chess, you know, all these different clubs and sports clubs, music clubs. There are districts all over Ohio that don't have any cyber training. And I sit there and I look down at your shoes, standing in Ohio. I go work in Licking County a lot. It's right next to where I live. Licking County has Intel moving in. Just announced 4 more data centers moving in. They have almost 50 sister companies moving in. You have all this technology coming into Ohio. The Air Force picked Mansfield, Ohio, as where the new cyber wing, the Air Force cyber wing is. That's moving into Ohio. You got all these technology companies moving into Ohio. A person could live in New Philadelphia or in the surrounding area here, work remotely, and be getting paid anywhere from $150,000 to $200,000 working for a technology company. And they could still live in their part of Ohio and enjoy life. You don't have to go drive to the city. You know, if you live in Columbus right now, not as many people after the pandemic drive into the city. Some people want to go in the office like 2 days a week, or some 1 day a week, and the rest of the time they live in their house, whatever, in Ohio, and they don't have to make that transit to the big city anymore. That's even a bigger argument for individuals who live out here, because you can do cyber, you can do technology, and you don't have to drive to be and sit in a cubicle somewhere. How many people knew that already? You don't have to drive and be in a cubicle when you're talking to students. That's my era. The modern era, you can be anywhere and do stuff on the internet. Just have to do it safely. Any questions about that? That's just our intro. Well, hopefully I got you all jazzed up here because what if you're going to go home and study cybersecurity? What's the requirement? Real loud. Bring a friend. Bring a friend. Call a friend. Ask a friend. Call me up. If you don't have a friend, call me up. I will study cyber with you on the weekend. I will assign somebody. I will do anything to get you to where, because there's going to be a time when you're going to get stuck. And then you're going to need to have a friend. You're going to say, Charles told me this is a hard subject and you need to have a friend. Having more than one friend is where it's at to be. Jerry and I are like best friends. And we just met like a couple of months ago. He asked for things, I asked for things. It goes back and forth. That's the way a friendship works. You know, but when Jerry tells me that there has to be a team that support one of your schools, my gosh, we're getting in the car, we're coming to help. There's not going to be a time in your life where you say, well, I asked for support and then I didn't get it. That does not happen. All right, we go to the next part. We talked about our mission. Our tagline says it all: building a more cyber secure Ohio. Ohio actually took that from us now because they like our tagline so well. It's used by the rest of the organizations. I've seen it on multiple slides from other agencies. I go like, wow, they took our tagline and made it their tagline. Building a more cyber secure Ohio. It begins. Now, some of you, I met individuals that have small schools, but it doesn't make a difference what side. The smaller the entity, remember, the smaller you are, the faster it's gonna be for you to get compliant. Not the other way around. So a lot of times I'll hear from individuals in small districts, they'll say, well, I'm one or two or three. Once we figure out today how to build your team, you are going to make your area of compliance faster than if you were like Ohio State University or Ohio University. Big organizations have big problems when it comes to cybersecurity. If you don't believe me, just go get on the internet. Big one, big problems because they're like so spread out, it's hard to control. So they're relying on electronic and they just don't have enough years of experience with electronic to go in and get that to work right. Will they solve it? Eventually they will. Why do we have an incident response plan? The incident response plan is a list. It's well written. I assigned it to Rich Knoll, who passed away a couple months ago, and great guy, 50 years government service and stuff like that, very meticulous. Michael Novak, who's a big time trainer, team leader at a big company and the cyber service. These individuals, when they write documents, but when we pull up the incident response plan, if you've already pulled up the incident response plan from the documents, I like our incident response plan. We've used, does anybody know which state a couple years ago was hit more with cyber attacks than any other state? Wasn't Ohio. Texas. So when we were looking at incident response plans, when Ohio Homeland Security asked us to put one together, and then we looked at the Texas plan, and Texas wrote a great template, and so we used that and modified it and turned it into the Ohio template. That's what you're going to be working on today. In that incident response plan, it doesn't miss anything. It's not just a technical plan. People say it's bigger than just one when it's technical, because they'll say, I said, well, when your legal person comes on your team, well, you say, well, you mean an incident response team? I have a lawyer. I said, well, your school has a lawyer. Aren't you going to have your lawyer come when you have a major breach? I think so. And in there, it has all the cyber laws that are in Ohio in one of the sections, I think section 7. So it's subdivided into areas where it goes and tells you to do that. So you have to have a plan, because I do know what documents you need to read if you have to go in and learn all this stuff by your own. So it was Michael Novak's job and a few other cyber reservists to go in there, read all those plans, put this together, and come out with a comprehensive document that makes sense. And it was tested on the template that we built it off was tested on the state that had more cyber incidences than any other state in the country, which is Texas. So it's a well-tested template. Does a plan save you from your whole district? No, it just becomes a common document that your superintendent's going to read, your treasurer's going to read, the IT director is going to read, the team people on the team is going to read. Not everybody in the whole place is going to read it, but it basically gives you a format on how we're going to process incidents inside our districts. In there today, we're going to put in key people. You got to have the key people. You know your people. I don't know any of your people right now. I just know your faces. But you got to put in your plan who do you expect to show up. We're going to cover that today, and then we're going to start putting in some outline. We're not going to do a lot. We're just going to adopt the plan, put in our key people, and then over the next few months, especially our next summer, we're going to start writing out what our procedures are. You're not going to be able to do all your procedures today, other than we're going to go through a tabletop and then learn all those different things. We know that we're doing this, and it's part of a 5-step process. 5-step process gets you to the 108 controls and your NIST compliant. These are all of the everything we're going to cover today. We're going to cover all this stuff. Most of it we're going to cover in the tabletop exercise. It's a lot. Do you have to, I work in all these all the time. But when you get gap analysis, you're looking for like, hey, what's my control? We go through over the 90-day process, 100-day process, working with us. You're going to learn eventually what all 108 controls, at least you might not memorize that, hey, RP1 is response plan is executed during or after an incident. Well, if I have an incident going on, and I know it's more than just the student lost their laptop. It's like, hey, a teacher got their laptop stolen and all the grades are being changed. Oh, I think maybe we're leaning from event to an incident. But we're gonna learn about that today. But the whole point is that it's a process. It's a process. When they play baseball, they got 4 bases. Notice that when they run the bases, they don't run the wrong way. You got to know the process in order to survive. When the 10-person team shows up at your district, they're going to follow the process. They're not allowed to do anything else. There's no hot dogging it. There's no like, hey, I'm going to do whatever I want to do. When they get there, they're going to work for you. Going through here and understanding this, all you're ending up doing is all of a sudden you got the, what we call them SMEs, subject matter experts. All of a sudden 10 SMEs show up. It's your network. And then if I was in charge, I'd say, get to work. They will not change anything on your network. They'll constantly meet with you every couple hours, every 3 or 4 hours. And they'll say, hey, this is what we found. What do you want to do? Yes, they'll always ask you. They will not change anything on your system. They follow the plan. They follow the plan. The network owner owns the network. That's you. The team's there to go in and augment your team. And it all works out great because I've seen it. I've seen it in the state of Ohio. All of a sudden you come in, and the cyber reserve is really good at getting integrated very quickly in with your team. And so you end up with subject matter experts to help you out. Easy, easy, because they're trained to work for you. If I didn't know what to tell them, yeah, I just say, set up over there. If you go and you look at their plan, they have exactly where their tables, they set up their tables the same way. They do this. When you see them working on the weekend, when they go like their unit training on a Saturday, they have a red team person. Anybody, any red teamers I got in here? Red team is bad people. They're hackers. So the red team gets in there a day ahead of time and they'll put ransomware on a server and on the endpoints. And they'll have like this little network over here. And then the cyber reserves don't know what they got filled for fun for that day. And then they'll go in there and they'll say, oh. So if you're a red teamer, you never know what the red team is going to do to you to make your day miserable. But the cyber reserve, they're like cold. They're just like, oh my gosh, they're like cool as ice. So during our training, if you ever go to a blue team training, it's what we're considered, cyber reserves considered to be a blue team. And so if you ever do that, they will have play actors come in, they'll have people yelling and screaming, and you will never see a cyber reserve even raise their eyeballs. So they're trained to stay focused on what they're doing and not let any of the outside world interfere. So your superintendent can come in and say, gotta do this, gotta do that. And they'll just sit there and they'll just keep on doing it because they know they've told their team leader that they're 15 minutes away from figuring out exactly where the perpetrator got in. They're working on that. Once they do it, they'll pull out the report and say, this is what we need to do. Fix your network. Exactly. I've been in those things too. And then they go in there and when they do the hot washes in the evening, they'll sit there and they'll say, at 11 o'clock, when you did that, it killed the red team. It killed them dead. Once you close that hole and the red team can't get in anymore, dead. Dead on arrival. That's what they're in there. That's what their skill set is. To find the issue, plug the hole, fix the system. But you will notice if you ever get to work with a cyber reserve team that they are just cool customers. And they're trained. Every once in a while we get a rookie on the team and somebody will come in and say, hey, you gotta move your car, you gotta do this, you gotta do that. And you actually see them move their chair and then the other person sit next to them like, down. Settle down. They're taught, and the only person that so if you went in as a network owner and you talk to a SME, they won't be implied. They'll probably say I or my team leader's over there, but they're not allowed to talk to the network owner. Only because they have tasks to do, they've been given a task. It's just like going in a tower in an airfield. You have a person in charge. If you visit a tower, you talk to that person, and then they'll talk to a SME, a subject matter expert. All very good stuff. This is that Neola 8635. 8635 is the Neola board policy that goes out there and tells you that your school district is NIST certified. So if you look at the ones, most schools in Ohio haven't adopted that yet. What day should you adopt 8635? When you're what? When you're compliant. Don't do it first. And then because you should wait till you're compliant and your vendors are compliant, then go ahead and make it a policy. If you do what New York did, which is create the law, and now all the school districts, they have public school districts in the state of New York are sitting there trying to get compliant. And now you can imagine, but isn't everybody's job is hard enough? Can you imagine having somebody like a state auditor send you a letter saying, well, you're done yet, you're done yet. The logical way is doing what we're doing in a team. Get there. If you want to adopt 8635 after you're compliant, that's probably the correct thing to do. Because your vendors will ask, why do I have to do this? Well, 8635, when you get to the bottom of the page, says, oh, by the way, all vendors have to be, just like in the 121 law and in New York, 121.9 says all the vendors in New York State for school, including Power School and Canvas, and all of them all have to be NIST compliant. If their vendors that you use right now sells into the state of New York, they're required by New York law to be compliant. I believe Illinois has law too. So now we're going to go in and because we're set up a little bit different in here. So we're going to go right into the incident response plan. So if you can go into the packet, did everybody were able to download the documents? If you didn't get the documents, ask your friend next to you to help you get there. And we're going to go straight into those documents. I think we're pretty much done with that. Yeah. I think we're going about 15 more minutes. I think. We're opening up the incident response plan. And the first thing you need to do is go in and where it has the brackets, you can go in and put your school name in there. So wherever you have those brackets in your plan, you can just do a replace. You can do it today, you can do it later on. If you go down to page 3, you'll see where it says name of school district. So that's the first thing we need to do is go in and put that in. Where it says name of school district and the person who is sponsoring the plan. How many people here are the plan sponsor? If you're like the chief technology person at your school. Yeah, that's you. You can put the school, you don't have to put your personal address in there, but you can put the school or name of school. Just insert appropriate name and title, what your name is, what your title. If you don't want to, if everybody at your school knows who you are, you're in a small district, then yes, that's pretty easy. All we're going to do in the next 10 minutes is just go through this. We're not going to like read the whole plan. We're just going to go in and put your name in and just start working the plan. And then just get ourselves familiarized with it. And then when we do the tabletop exercise, you can pop back into it and look at it. When you get down to page 4, that's the exciting point. That's where you get to put in the names of the individuals that are going to be on your team. We'll be fast, let me know. when you get down to page 4, and you'll say, well, I don't have enough, you know, you might not, at your small school district, you might not have all these. Or the person from OME-RESA is your ITC is your network administrator or your system administrator. Putting I don't know is an okay answer. If you have a building technician or person who a facilities manager, that's important for physical security. How many people at their school districts have people out at like the elementary schools, middle schools, where there are like technology coaches or the principals of technology? Yeah, there you go. I've seen that at school districts. Technology coaches need to be on your incident response team. Your EMIS coordinator, that's your data coordinator. They need to be on there. The head teacher, the person who knows how to talk to all the teachers, you know, or staff, you know, so the superintendent, who is your legal counsel? You might not know your legal counsel. That might be a question when you get back to the school district is like, hey, who when we have something legal, which is definitely going to happen when you have a breach, and you have to add your legal counsel into your incident response team. Are they going to be fixing servers? No. Will they be there to advise the school on the breach? Yes. So we're going to take a couple minutes. Anybody have any questions? Because we put in names in there, but if it doesn't match the name of your, like I go to the big school districts like in Akron, they have things like assistant superintendent, but change the names to be what the name that the person actually their title. So don't keep any of those names in there unless that exactly matches. So if you don't call your network administrator, you're calling something else like, hey, you, then, and then you go in and change the title. This should be, as you revise this plan, this should be for your school district, and it should look less as a template.
So, and you clarify the legal counsel.
Legal counsel, every school district typically has somebody like a lawyer who.
I get that.
Yeah.
Underneath it says avoid losing attorney-client privilege.
Yeah, it just, yeah, there's nothing, I mean, it's just. They're, you know, they're not a member, and when we were working on this, they're not technically a person that you're actually gonna have sitting in a room being in your team. So you just need to have their name, but when you train with them during incident response training locally, you just need to tell the legal counsel is like, you're on my team, but you know, I'm not gonna give you something to do that, that's, you know, that has nothing to do with legal. So maybe we could have said that a little bit better. Right below that, you have supply chain membership by roles. And so there's a spreadsheet in there. Some people will type their information on this, or they will go into the spreadsheet. If you click, if you're a spreadsheet type of person, these same tables are in the spreadsheet that are in the package of data. And there, it's called before, I want to say, let me make sure I got this one right. Here's the spreadsheet. Yes, it's before, and then you'll see where there's a spreadsheet, and it'll have a place for you to type in all your vendors. And this is not the vendor that is supplying your paper. This is the vendor that is going in your data center. So most of you will have your ITC as your #1 vendor that goes in there and does certain tasks. Just because we work with all different size school districts. Now, will you have this all done today? No, it'll be something where when you go back to your school, and you will put in names of like your cybersecurity insurance. Who is that? What's the name of the agent? Those type of things. Oh. Don't feel like you're under any pressure. There's no requirement. A lot of school districts will have this completed in about 30 to 40 days, because once you add somebody on your team or you're recruiting, you should ask that person, hey, I need you to be on the incident response team. And then show it to the key people at your school district to make sure that they agree that this person is going to be on this team. Teaching and learning coaches, taught, EMIS coordinator, or whatever you call your data coordinator, that person who sends all those reports up to state. That's key. That's a key position. Sometimes that's the superintendent, sometimes it's the principal. Only you know, and you might not know all the answers, who all your key people are with data at your school, but it's a process. Any other questions about just starting a list of personnel? And in there, you get their phone number and their email, and then any after hour. So if it happens on a Sunday, you contact them. Remember, once you're done with your incident response plan, just don't stow it on your domain, because if your domain's breached, you will have zero access to your domain. So make sure once you're finished, or you got it far enough along, that the copy your incident response plan. Some places will print it, put it in the data center in a binder, and it'll be right there, printed, ready to go. All those different things. Cool. Excellent. The next section, section 1, is the glossary of terms. Section 1, glossary of terms, is there not for you. It's there for all the people who are going to be at your school when you get ransomware. There, if you ever want to watch something, they go in and you have. Because we talked a lot about this in the cyber reserve, like, do we want to put a glossary? And so, well, there's people are going to show up when you have a breach or you have an incident, and now you're getting it's being elevated, and the FBI is going to come in. They're going to sound like cyber SMEs. That it's just the nature of the game. So they'll put things, and you can ask them, not just give them verbal, but write down what they are asking you to do. And they'll have certain words, and words are powerful in cyber. And so if they are saying, hey, we're doing incident response, we're doing industrial control, and somebody on the team has no clue what industrial control, because you have something controlling your HVAC, and they say, I have somebody who on the team will say, like, oh, I'm going to look in here and see what is an industrial control. Industrial control is a thing that comes off a programmable logical controller. It goes off and controls your heating and air conditioning. Got it. Figured out. I got it. Good. So terms are in there not for the smart cyber people. They're in there so that all the members of the school, remember, we're not writing this. This is not just for technicians. This is for everybody, that when something happens in your school district, that everybody can go in and do stuff. Anybody have questions on section 1, glossary? Section 2, if you scroll down, is the incident response procedure. Most of our procedures aren't going to be written until we do risk management. That's where we go and come up with all the mitigation. But the thing is, it's there. Section 2 is there. So we put in some of the things in there, the scope, the background. We put in some of the Neola. When you go through your Neola policies, which you might not have time to do, but we'll do it when we come visit your school. We'll look at, let's say you have 5 policies that have to do with cyber that your school runs under, that's approved by the board. We can't do things and be, even if there's something, if there's a board policy, we have to know what that board policy is. Now, has anybody ever gone on to your website and you see how many board policies you got? It's like this big, right? So what we do when we help you with this plan is we look at your board policies, and we might not get to that till here, where we're actually very pointed with your system. But if you're ahead of me and you already know what your cyber ones are, acceptable use policy, other board policies, your 8305 policy, those ones, we'll put that in there. So that way you can imagine there's a breach. and nobody knows what the board policies is because we haven't read them. Now, if we do in our pre-planning to where, let's say you have 4 cyber, really truly cyber policies in your board policies, and there's a total of 120. Would you rather just pay attention to the 4 and talk to the team in a meeting? Because somebody is going to walk in there and they'll say, what does your policy say about that? The whole idea about putting those cyber policies into your incident response plan is to go in and say, hey, we have 4 cyber policies or 5 cyber policies, and we're going to stick them down there. If you want to just link them, that's great. You can do it that way too. But the whole point is you don't want to do on the day of a breach is to go through the 120 policies and find out what was the decisions that the board had on this issue. Because you can't ignore board policies. You do it at your own detriment. I'm just going to say that out loud. Because somebody coming back is going to be a sharpshooter in the press corps and saying, hey, why are you doing it this way? The board policy doesn't do it this way. Atlanta had a breach, a ransomware breach. It's like, if you ever watch, FEMA has a list and it shows every single day at the press conference in Atlanta. And it's just like Augusta. Anybody watch the ones for Augusta, Georgia? Monday, they were briefed. Tuesday, they weren't briefed. Wednesday, they were briefed. Thursday, they don't know what they're doing. Friday, they're going to pay the ransom. It's like all you see at these different organizations is that nobody sat down for even 30 minutes as an organization and had a serious discussion like we are going to happen today, to where you say, what are we going to do if we have an incident? Who's going to be the communications director? We're not going to let Charles talk. You know, that should be written down. Well, you know, who's going to talk, who's not going to talk. But once you have an incident, there will be a point of the communications director. There's 2 controls in this that says what the communications director needs to do. And so in order for your organization to be NIST compliant, whoever's in charge of communication, you know, one that announces the school off and all that stuff like that, that person needs to have training so that they can go out there and they can make the public announcement. The most embarrassing one was up in Cleveland on Easter, 3 Easters ago, where the FBI was there and the city controls the airfield, Cleveland Hopkins. And then the city talked, and basically, I mean, if you were sitting there with the FBI came in second. And then basically the FBI communications director said, everything that they just told you today for the last 30 minutes was wrong. Because the FBI was sitting there with the cyber units doing stuff. And unless the communications director never took the time to go down and ask you what was going on, and they just made stuff up. So it's kind of like forced the FBI into making that statement. Very similar thing happened in Atlanta. They still haven't solved the one in Atlanta. With the ransomware attack, last time I heard, they're still rebuilding their system. City Akron, you guys know City Akron was hit a breach 3 years ago. 4 months we were down. 4 months of things. 4 months. And when it's 4 months, you almost count $1 million to $2 million a month. So I don't know, a treasurer where you get $2 million, because I know your cybersecurity insurance might be $500,000. So where are you going to get $2 million a month? And then after 4 months, that's $8 million. Where's that coming from? I think you got a plan. Called cyber reserve. Cool. All right. So anyway, yeah. We're much better when the cyber reserve was not in existence when they had that before. You go down to section 4, section 5, it gets into when you look at section 5, it's talking about that's the national standard today. Now, when we're done training together, section 5 is going to be all Greek to you. It's all going to be good, but section 3, privacy, security, event, initial triage checklist. There are a lot of checklists in your packet. It's on page. I did include Grimes's book. Now I give that list to cyber reservists going and say, hey, you have a few minutes, listen to Grimes. Grimes makes what's called the cyber cyber handbook. The most education, as things get in the IT department, recovering from events, students losing their laptop, teachers losing their laptop, changing passwords, that's what we live in IT department. But what happens is when you go in and you know, it really is ransomware, it's something detrimental. You're being asked to pay a ransom. You're gonna call the FBI. You're gonna call your cybersecurity insurance. You're probably gonna do it simultaneously. People always ask me, which one do you do first? Well, I would have 3 individuals trained on your team. One calls the EMA to get the cyber reserve. One calls the FBI to inform them. The reason you have to call the FBI is the FBI can tell you exactly, based upon, you know, they'll look at your system, exactly who is the ransomware group that hit you. And if they have a playbook for it, they will actually go in and work with the whole team. And we were already fixing it because we know exactly what that ransomware group's playbook is. They'll say things like, don't pay the ransomware because these guys will never give you your, you know, they're just gonna mess with you. So the FBI is a critical person, should be on your list. So wherever your FBI office is in your county, or you can call the one, there's an FBI number in the incident response plan, you call that one at state level. Call the cyber reserve, we already went over that. You need to have the EMA director on your incident response plan phone list, so you can call that individual up. Call your cybersecurity insurance policy. Even better yet, because so far, every mission I've been on to, we pull up the cybersecurity insurance policy. When I read it, I always find out it's the first time that the IT director read it. In every case, on all these hundreds of schools, I'm reading the cybersecurity insurance policy at the same time the IT director has read the policy. And I mean, read the policy. If it's 25 pages, we're going to read the whole thing. Because if we do something that negates the policy, what's the treasurer going to say? Going to say, you guys screwed up. You screwed up or because you want to get money out of it. Right? So you can't screw up the system to where the treasurer doesn't like the cyber reserve or the FBI or whoever's there. Okay, so you got to rule, you got to read all these. That's that pre-planning that we're doing right now. We're going to read you right now. I'm going to read the cybersecurity insurance. It's not going to be your favorite reading. It's not going to match up there with, you know, 'Twas Night Before Christmas and all that. It's going to be kind of dry, but you got to read it. Cool. You have impact and escalation. Yeah, this is all fun stuff that you get to read. You get to sit down and read, go through. Almost every single thing we're going to do for the next 5 seminars is going to go through this until we finish the very last one, that network configuration, and we sign it off. And you're going to understand everything in your plan. You're going to understand a lot about the day. The key contacts that are on page 24. 24, your key contacts. The treasurer is key. The treasurer is key because the treasurer is probably going to keep you from buying stuff that you need to buy without having an explanation of why we should buy it. Most of it is when you do a cyber response team, you know, you'll have something in your plan to say, hey, we're going to use this office on the 2nd floor. Where does it make sense to set up your cyber? Everybody has a cyber, kind of like a command post where the superintendent's going to be, the treasurer's going to be, IT director's going to be. It will not be where the cyber reserve is. Cyber reserve is probably going to want to be in a room that you can put 10 people in there with more computers than you ever saw in your life. I mean, they'll fit into an area maybe this size, half of this room is a good room for cyber reserve where they can spread out. But I mean, we can go in a smaller room, but you need to have a room in your plan to where the FBI and the cyber reserve come in and be nerds. That's what they're going to do. They're going to tell you exactly what's wrong with your network. Your technical people will be there. I'll have Jerry there from you know, and we're solving the issue. It'll just sound like a control room for an airfield. But over on this other side, that's not in the technical room, needs to be a room where the command. This is command central. It's where your communication director is, where the superintendent is, where the treasurer is, where they have lots of little charts. And when these people give you reports every couple of hours, you say, hey, we'd like that report to give like every 3 hours, where we're at. And then they come in and you tell them exactly, we'd like to have it on 8.5 by 11 landscape. We like font. I'm telling you, we want font to where, because some of us are older and we need to have bigger font. Tell them whatever you want. They will do that. They will give you those whatever, because they're going to ask you when they're setting up, how often do you want your reports? How big, what do you want those reports to look like? If you already have that in your incident response plan, this is what we want our reports to look like. Because when we get there, we're going to say, do you have an incident response plan? And we're all going to read it inside of like 60 minutes. We're going to read, and then if you already have your policies in there, I checked the box, I read your policy. The more stuff you put into your plan, when the FBI and the Cyber Reserve shows up, I'm going to read a very quick summary of all of your stuff. Now, there is something we're going to ask for, like all, which is not in here, it's in our seminars, where we're going to look at all your data flows and your network diagram. We're going to know like where all your stuff is. The Cyber Reserve has the coolest set of data flows you ever seen. When we get to that part of the training, you're going to create data flows, which probably, in other words, how do they do payroll? Who's the EMIS coordinator? What does that look like? And we should look at all those data flows. So believe it or not, down the road, seminar 3, seminar 4, we're going to look at how to do the data flows. We're going to work with your school. We're going to get all your data flows done. For the first time, you as the IT director and the superintendent and treasurer are going to know exactly where all your data is. That's what the exercise is trying to do. It takes about 3 or 4 hours with 3 or 4 people. And at that point, and we already have templates done because we already done a ton of schools. And then your different key people will say, well, we're kind of like this. Our bank is here like this. But we're going to see where's your payroll data at? Where's your retirement data at? Where is your gradebook data at? How many people have all their data flows done now? And you can tell me where your servers are at that hold that data in the country. We found a school district the other day and a city, did a school in a city a couple weeks ago, and the same time, and found out that they were storing data in Europe. That permissible in Ohio? Think about it. You don't have to answer that out loud, but I'll tell you what the answer is. Just because you can click and send data someplace, you need to go check check with your lawyer and say, hey, are we allowed to save student data in the country of Spain? Or in Ukraine? Or in South Korea? And I'll tell you what the answer is. But your legal team under GB3 is supposed to give you guidance on that. And you should not. The guidance in Ohio is if you have Ohio data, they would like to have it in Ohio. That way, if your district ever goes in and they're arguing about it in a court of law, while they're arguing about, a warrant will be issued by the judge and they will go to that data center and they will pull that server. If you've never seen it happen, they'll pull that server and then and hold it until the decision's been made. The guidance from Ohio is that if you don't have your stuff in Ohio data center, how does the highway patrol go get your data? Because neither the school owns it, nor does the server data farm own it, or the data center. Who owns the data for the student? The students. The students. So Ohio will go in and say, oh, we're going to go get this data for the citizens of Ohio. And so if you ever go and punch me up on the internet, you'll see it. Wow, Charles had to testify ECOT trial as expert witness and stuff like that. Oh yeah. And I did. I've seen data centers say, well, you can't take your data. I go like, I just make a phone call and the court order is typed up in like an hour or 2. And then the stuff is full. No data center can say, well, you owe me money. I'm going to hold this data. I go like, I don't own the data. You don't own the data. You don't own the data. It's owned by the people of Ohio. Put it someplace safe, and then of course you guys can argue for the next 6 years in court, like who owes who what. But The main case is to go out there and protect the data. Breach notification, this is one with the laws. So if you go into 25, page 25 on, it covers, if you scroll through, you can see where all the laws, so we got help from the legal people and the agencies in Ohio to help us put that together. And they put in all the Ohio revised laws that concern data privacy. So people always ask me, says, are there laws in Ohio for data privacy? Section 5, read them. You don't have nothing to do this weekend? Read the law. So if you don't report the breach, if you had a breach and you don't report the breach, but I will give a warning to, if you're a technology department person, you should not use the B word as often as Charles does. You shouldn't use the breach word. We have events and incidents. You need to allow the legal team at the school district to determine, based upon the law, whether it's a breach. So I have some individuals in here who are top level executives at the school district. Don't allow your technology teams to use the B word. We can see it in the newspaper all the time, but it technically isn't the B word until what happens? The legal team, which is not that person that we asked to be on associated team, comes in, listens to our case of what we think happened, and then the legal team is going to very cautiously advise the school board and the executive staff whether it really is a B word. Other than that, it's still an incident. Because once you say the B word out loud in front of the press, that has all kind of legal connotations to it. So it's just it's an event. Little Johnny lost their laptop. That's an event. When all of a sudden we think there's data on it, then you can have rules at your school district to determine when's an incident. Incident means you're going to evoke your incident response plan. If you evoke your incident response plan, do you have to call everybody in right away? No, it's just Johnny lost her teacher, Mrs. Smith lost her laptop. It's still an incident. It's just not big enough to constitute the B word. So we will learn that today as we go through. All right, cool. So we'll just scroll here through this post-incident. There's all kind of checklists. And there's all kind of things. Eventually, you'll have your own checklist in there. If you don't have a checklist, you can adopt a checklist that are inside the plan. But when you get down to the bottom, there's all kind of sample reports. If your school system already has reports and you guys have things in your ticketing system, why would you be using the Texas reports that we left in there? If you're using electronic reporting systems, like you have a meeting and that your school district, you guys use a certain form for a meeting, use that as your meeting minutes or cyber incident response team meeting. Do not just come up with a new form just because I put in the Texas one in there. Take the one out and say, we're going to use the Ohio or the Buckeye Career Center reporting system. Always change the plan to make it your plan. Do not use their forms, use your own forms whenever possible. On the bottom, when you get to page 38, it gives you all kind of state people to call. The only one you really need to call is the EMA director in your county. They will make all the calls for you. And that is basically that. And reports means after you have an incident, should you do a report? Yes. I'm always on the gold team. So far on when I'm on an incident response team. So basically I write the report for the incident response. So that there are individuals on the cyber reserve who are like that. They have to issue what's called a gold report that says everything that happened and stuff like that. If I was a network owner, I would say, here, Charles, here's my cover page. And then I'll write the gold report, which is about, let's say 30 or 40 pages. On a big incident, maybe only 5 on a small incident. But I can go ahead. I know how to read somebody else's logo. I can basically add that to the top. We have to generate the gold report. The FBI will generate a gold report saying everything they found. They'll hand it to you. They'll give you the electronic file. They'll give you everything you need to do your job. But that's what we're there to do. But in the end, if you want us to put your school logo, turn it into your school document, use your templates, all you gotta do is say, hey, I would like to use our template for this report. Give me the template, that's how the goal report's gonna be done. So always try to think when you're doing these rehearsals, how to make it as easy as possible. And that's the whole point about doing this tabletop today is do our first rehearsal together. Keep on modifying your incident response report every time you do it. It might be a year and a half because let's say you only do these incident response trainings every 6 months. You're only required to do it once a year, but this is going to meet your annual requirement. And, but if you do them twice a year, each time you're updating your plan based upon experience. Oh, and does anybody have any questions on adopting an incident response plan? I know, it's just a lot of stuff. It really is. Probably the most important person that reads this is the technology director and the superintendent and the treasurer and the legal person. So that way, the ones that have to talk to the outside world, this is probably like gold bone because it gets them to figuring out what they need to do. Honestly, from network owner down to the SMEs that come out and help you fix your network and the ITC, we're about fixing the network, right? Like, the superintendent will say something like, can we get back up and running in 2 days? And then you get your marching orders, right? And then we get our marching orders too. We could end up looking for stuff for the next 7 days. But if we hear from the network owner that we need to be back up and running in 2 days, then we will do our best to find out what the issues were, close those problems out, and then come out with a set of instructions on how we had to rebuild the network and then be up and running in 2 days. Now, if we're not successful, you don't want to, if you rebuild the network and we're not successful, guess what happens on day 3? He comes back, the person comes back. But in my experience, if we find all the holes and we close the holes and we know what caused the incident, then we'll be like, hey, okay, we're gonna be all right. Cool, I gotta let you guys take a break. And then when we come back, we're gonna do the tabletop exercise. And so you get, we'll come back at 10:52. 10-minute break, and then we'll get into our exercise.
Yes, yes, I get that.
I don't know that family does. Get away from
Right.
We were just looking at that, and I was like, well, that's you.
Yeah.
That's so weird.
Are you the only treasurer here?
There's stuff.
That's good. Just be careful what you're doing. Yeah.
So we're completely on that.
Yeah, I had to testify to ECON trial.
We usually know what that's about. All of those. things That we're lucky about.
You know, when I met the multiple network administrators who worked on that
I don't
project,
know if we're required to have them.
they, you know, it was like the most Band-Aid, network you've ever seen. And, yeah, it was like, and so we went back to the court later on after we got everything the way that ODE wanted to do.
A lot of work.
And then it was like.
Yeah, because I'm one man band and so.
Zero level. And they had to hire 50 different. There were so many different
Yeah, I'll
people.
put my list of work that I got all this morning, so I've been
And
here.
not only that,
And I'm like.
well, but the thing is that they should have had, ECOG should have hired somebody on the technology side,
Yeah.
somebody that they're. So. They have 12 rounds.
Right. But I'm just saying, I mean, no, I agree, I'm just saying realistically, when I go back.
They had stuff that was, and I had like the best SharePoint person in the United
We're
States.
working on today, it's gonna be take
And
time.
I would get,
When I go back and I try to explain to
you know,
superintendent,
additions, they're like, well, this never worked, we're down. we're
you
this,
gotta
like
do this.
And they were trying to make stuff that was like. underlying
You do it.
work, stuff like that. So they're online school.
The biggest thing.
And their tech was like.
Well, he's the one that made me come here.
We changed it out. put it in the tech. Because we have supported for 8 years.
Because if there isn't,
Before
we know how many guys.
they transferred all of it, everything, all of it. And they finally,
Right.
Somebody else, you call our lawyer, you know, it lays everything out.
Yes.
It was a mess. It was a mess.
You get through.
So when I went to, I testified the first time, I gave the report and the judge is sitting there going like, you know, he's just looking over like, isn't somebody gonna say, Charles, like, the craziest thing in the whole world? Well, but the thing is that, and then all the.
But that's
On the
advantage.
defendant side, on their side, I'm over here.
So how,
on that side.
I mean, when's like the session? I mean, is it once a month?
Our next one is.
Everybody's got their head down.
Oh, okay.
The judge, nobody wants to work with the judge.
Oh, okay. All this stuff just they get thrown at us like one after another.
But this, the thing I like about this, when you're at the top, it starts giving you
Right.
high level. As far as you're concerned, we're just wanting to know high level, what your stance is.
Oh, yeah.
And then, okay, what's my risk management? What's my big spread? What systems do I have that are out? If they would have just done the big part, they would say, well, we got 5 servers. Like, as treasurer, you mean, I can give you an order. And they're just talking about something, blah, 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 blah. It's just hard to understand.
Right. Okay.
This report, so this highlight maybe or executive, this is where we need to go in and bring it back into. It's more of that, but the thing is, you know, getting into stuff where you're there, it's just like, you know, like, I don't really want to go like technology. I just want to. What else are you worried about? What do I do? And how much maybe you're nice, have 3 quotes. That was the next respect, when they went out and anticipated, you're gonna ask like, hey, is that quoted? How much is it gonna cost? Yeah, anticipate what the executives are gonna have to do.
Other than the rest of the tech. The rest of
I feel better about it.
That's what I'm saying. You guys have the command possible. Not for communication.
Right. That's what we're here. We have.
you know, the data center or closets here. And then next room next to it is where you have 50 people in there from FBI, cybersecurity, insurance people. And they're over there. And then you just put a thing up there. And say, this is the agenda. And that's what you do. We're just saying, we would like to have a report every night now.
I didn't know it was a progression, like, okay.
Yeah.
This is the time. It's got, you know, it's like, okay, that's a good time. Yeah. Dude, that's not right. It's kind of like me. I should have gotten my ass.
Representatives.
You know, what do you think? And me.
Figure it out. If you read Brian's book, order that, just maybe one copy, pass it around the room. About.
That's all.
Right. So. I think you get it where you can read it online. Maybe it's time they leave it. Thing about paying the rent and what a bad thing about. Companies. Come on, all around wildfire. But all brings up the water side to have it. And maybe. What do they do? Well, we come on the other one. Yeah, so we are. Point where some of you guys were professing the other. And we know that we're trying to. All right, we get settled in and we'll zoom through and we'll be done with this before we get started. Has anybody been through a tabletop before? That's a response? Yep, one person. Cool, so you can give me a grade card. If you've been through an instant response training before, you can give me a B, C, D, or F when I get to the end. Okay, so, and I know we're so it's fine. I like there'll be noise this whole exercise. So again, this is one of 5 exercises, and this is an annual requirement. So once a year. So when I come in to visit, when a team comes to visit your school, whoever is the technology director, whoever is the person, you need to write a memo after today showing your lessons learned, things that you think you're going to change in your incident response based upon things you learned in this exercise. And then you also need to go in and put this memo in the folder for incident response with your other guide, because the cyber reserve is going to say, did you have an exercise this year? You say, yeah, we did it on October 26th. And he's going to say, can you show me evidence? And that's what you're going to do. So we build our incident response plan. So what did we do today? We built an incident response plan from a skeleton. And then we went in and we went through a short exercise to understand how these exercises go. The cyber reserve uses the same format, incident response tabletop, and you'll probably do tabletops for the first year, year and a half. After a while, you'll say, we're done with tabletops. We're going to go and do something real, simulated attack on the cyber range or something like that. In other words, you'll want to go in and ramp it up. Okay, cool. This is the way we always do it. We always plan on around 120 minutes. And we have ransomware attacks, stolen admins, malware, cloud-based. We have a whole list. If you want to do something hybrid, when the cyber reserve goes through and we get attacked this summer for our annual training for validation, we had 8 vectors. That means 8 different groups attacking us all on the same time. Well, we're the cyber reserve. They're sitting there. They're like, it's just like if you go into a simulator for flying an airplane, an experienced pilot, they're going to have multiple things happen so they can test it against it. If you don't believe it about simulator, Sully writes all about it in his book about how many times he says the reason I've landed the plane right in New York is because he'd been in simulator training to where they went through also. How many mistakes did Sully make? He talks about it in his book. How many mistakes did Sully make when he landed the plane safely in the water? Got that? And you can tell because the plane's like this. He forgot to close the door. It's on the checklist in the simulation training. And he writes, he says, even because you're under stress, he had what, 42 seconds to do all this stuff, and they forgot to close those doors. And then you can remember what that plane looked like. It looked like losing its tail in the water. That's because the back doors were open and he was supposed to close them so that they could float. Okay. All right. So even a highly trained person like Sully, who safely landed his plane in an emergency, he went through simulation, and even the famous Sully made one mistake. So cut yourself some slack. You can make a mistake too. Okay. All right. So if you want some of these sent to you, so you can do these same things at your school district, all you got to do is call a friend, call me up, call Jerry, and we'll go ahead and make a tabletop for you, and then you can use it for your training. If you want us to be there to do the tabletop and lead it, all you got to do is ask. The ground rules. In here, we're going to hear about great things to do, and here we're going to have silly things. Remember, a person, when we form into teams, because that's what we're going to do, like different groups and different rows are going to be different teams, because we need, we can have groups of 2, groups what, when we do the exercise, we're going to put you into teams to where you're going to solve this problem in your team. If you're online, it's just going to be the best we can do it. But the thing is that people are going to say ideas out loud. Just remember, always, whenever you run this exercise, somebody might say something silly, but the thing is that typically in the cyber reserve, if I had Chris Freiling sitting over here and he's figuring something out, he'll say something. I'll listen to him, because even though it sounds like peculiar, it's a peculiar idea. 9 times out of 10, he's right. So just remember, it's out of all those rules out there, to have a safe zone for ideas, because the team leader's collecting up all the ideas, the team's listening to it. Somebody might have a different insight than you that figures out what the problem is ahead of time. So on the incident response team, we're going to have a team leader. We're going to have subject matter experts. When you get your team put together for this exercise, just scoot your chairs together, and then you'll be all working together in the simulated exercise. You're gonna need, you can have a person representing vendors and stuff like that. If you're the team leaders, and that's what we're gonna do, we're gonna pick a team leader for each team. I'll go around while we do the first one. And then, we'll go in and the team leader said, hey, who wants to be the subject matter expert, acts like they know about the network, and who wants to be the communication director? Who wants to play that part? Okay, so there's a little bit of play acting in this too. The 800-61R2, which is in the slide over there, that is the standard. So again, if you didn't have anything, you don't want to read Grimes' book, you want to read the Bible, 800-61R2 is the standard for incident response. When you read your incident response plan, it has 800-61 rolled into it. So you'll notice that there's a lot of similarities between your incident response plan and 800-61R2. When the FBI shows up and Cyber Reserve shows up, they're going to run their plan under 800-61R2. That is the standard for cyber incident response in the United States. There isn't a second standard. That is the standard in the United States. So anytime you run into a professional, if they don't know how to do 800-61R2, I don't know why they're in your school building. Okay. You need to have these terms. We talked about them before. Anything that happens, Johnny loses or Sally loses their laptop, that's an event. So you can have events all during the day. The superintendent says, how many events do you have today? I have 12 events. That's basically, it's like saying, how many tickets did you have to process? Anything that comes in is an event. The question is, just because it's an event, it's in my ticketing system, what elevates it to a security incident? How many people, and this is a requirement in this, how many people eventually when they elevate to event, like Jerry was in here and he says that you're going to get an Albert report from his Nest scan. He says some of you received those. When we go to schools, most of them just go in and work it, but they never report back to their ITC that the event was closed. And what we find out is it didn't get into their ticketing system. It came in through an email. It'd been handled like an email. It never, in other words, if I look at your ticketing system, you don't have a category called cybersecurity incident. You need to have one of those because later on when we're doing the controls, so all it does means is that I have to create in my ticketing system a category that would do that. And then the technology director is going to say to you, if you're a technician or whatever, or the superintendent's like, how many cybersecurity incidents did we have last year? And you can go and just do a search based upon that category and say we had 8. The next year you have 16. If you had 16 after a year of 8, what would that tell me that I need to do? Remember, ransomware artists are in your system. They come in your system and they're hanging out for 18 months before a ransomware attack. So if your number of incidents are going up, if you read Grimes' book, he'll tell you that's because they're in your system. They're in there. We already talked about the B word. That's off limits for us. You could say it if you want during training. We don't have a lawyer in here, I don't think. But if you do that, you can say, hey, I think as a director or as an executive, I'm going to ask the lawyer now to make a determination because I have evidence that there's 250 records that have been on the dark web. 250 records in the state of Ohio, federal government, and in Europe constitutes a breach. But I'm not a lawyer, so I can't make the official statement for the school. But I do know what the definition is. Anybody have any questions about what we're going to do for the next till noon time? Cool. All right. So you get to decide which rows, how you want to do it, whether these 4 want to like turn around and create it, and then the 3, or you want to create a group of 7. Let's take a couple minutes to do that, and then tell me who your team leader is. Just do a couple minutes. I'll come around and get the team leader name. You can kind of like, if you're kind of like in a group and you're in, you know, in a group that's together. Okay. I want to make sure you're
So, that's what Tricia said.
A couple seconds to give us 5 minutes. I told you. Type this trumpet.
So we have a lawyer on it.
All right, so we got 4 groups. George is the group leader. Raise your hand, George. George is the group leader. The nice thing about group leaders, when we come up and say who's going to present for the group leader, I don't expect the group leader to be the spokesperson. That's a job that Josh would pick. Just make sure you're good at assigning jobs to the individuals, keep them in line. Lisa over here, same way. Lisa seems like she's excited about giving people jobs to do. And Aaron. So we got 4 groups. And that's, you would think like, how's that part? But in essence, it's exactly how it happens in the real world, because you got people on vacation. Cyber attacks always happen on Saturday afternoon or Sunday night on a holiday weekend. And then people start coming in from like the cyber reserve and stuff like that. People you meet for like the very first time. So it's not uncommon that you're going to get a percentage of individuals on your team. So here we go with the start. And then you'll notice that, so we have 4, so I'm training you as we go through. We have 4 scenarios. We have 4 of these. You don't have to do all 4. When you're doing this in your school, if you do just one scenario and train your team, that constitutes training. So sometimes you only get like 30 minutes or 45 minutes, and you only get to go through a couple of these. Maybe the first time you do it, you only have time to do 1 repetition, and this is 1. But in the problems, I always put 4, because if you have 2 hours, you can get through all the cycle. So here we go. We found at your school district on Thursday, today, so 26 at 1:30 p.m., the music department shared folder had multiple files tampered with. Musical documents had graffiti on them. The band director reported to the principal reported to the superintendent, who passed it on to the IT department. Superintendent asked you for an update by the end of the day. The questions, well, we're going to stay here for about 8 minutes or so, is the team leader is going to answer these, or, get some people on their team. And then when we call on you, as many of that we can, is the occurrence of cybersecurity incident or event? Who is your team leader? Which we know, I got that written down. Who are the members of your team? What are their roles? What stage of the incident response plan are we in? Okay, and then what actions will you implement and what will you report? There you go. You guys got 10 minutes. 10 minutes to work that based upon the information you received. So, team leaders, you're in charge.
Technically, no hard deadline, but
Depends on how much they're help them out. It's like, like how they form safety teams, like.
right.
Actually say, hey, we're down part of the
That's what I mean. One guy said, and how you walk through it, you're gonna, like, say your tenant that talks to your treasurer that calls the bank, your so-and-so that calls your lawyer, your so-and-so that calls cyber reserve, like, you lay all that out. You know what I mean? It's that way when the hits the fan, it's.
And by doing these exercises, now my question is, like, when we have people who are online, individuals are online, they could still do this And then we call, like, we might, in this case. They could just, like, I'm a team leader. But we wouldn't have to put it. So person online would have. They're doing it without it. Unless they're in a room with them.
In this situation, I was thinking, there needs to be a team for every.
But I think what's other thing, the department then has identified it as an event. The event being IT department, it's an event, we went back, the IT department then went back, looked at the documentation to see. Okay. But
I think what it is, like, you're looking to these different. No, I'm just, but yeah, I mean, given the situation, okay.
probably check the origin history of it.
Change it, right? That's. Once we've identified. And it's not identified the person who treated it, so eligible file, and you'll see it's modified. But they've got to be verified that that account is actually. So there, you know, we're talking about roles. Creating roles in this scenario.
The thing is, they're coming to the call, and you wanna know, are you officially in 13? Are we at that stage? I mean, it's up to you, you get the slides out, there's a little bit of like.
Oh, okay.
Right. This was the.
So it is kind of the there because if you had a crazy team, you got to do that. You really, if you have to convince him. What is great, what does not see is. Kind of like you give me your.
Yeah, that's.
And we don't even have those.
Like that.
You're gonna be the communication.
Good point.
Well, well, that's when it's fair. But I also think. But I guess the question comes down to inside. Every hour. Generally. Oh.
All right, we got 2 minutes warning.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I think that's why we don't.
All right, later, we got a couple of seconds here. We'll go ahead and get answers from the different groups. All right, does any group want to volunteer to be the first one to give us, you know, and when you do a tabletop, the most important thing I saw happen in this first 12 minutes or so is everybody started talking and collaborating together. That is a healthy sign. There's a lot of, the questions are the scenario when you guys are running these in your teams in the school, they're there to cause confusion at the beginning, to say like, what job are you are? Because some people are saying like, I don't know what job I am. You know, all of a sudden you said, hey, we have an exercise day, and they go like, what job am I in? And stuff like that. So that's why you should always, when you start the process, make sure everybody understands what their role is. All right, does any group want to go first?
We'll go first.
All right, so Josh's team, who's your spokesperson? Or are you going to speak for the team or? Okay, there you go.
Yeah. I'll take one.
All right,
So we're struggling a little bit with, A, what does the graffiti say? B, it's a shared folder. Is it a Google Drive? Is it a OneDrive? Is it a local shared folder? So we're sitting here throwing around a lot of hypotheticals. Do we need to involve the police? Why is the superintendent involved? We're kind of going all over the place with this.
so the Cyber Reserve has a list of which I can send to any school district. You say, Charles, when we get up to this, we're doing this. We have a 2-page list that has all our generic questions in there. And, you know, just like what you said. So we know that when we come on there, so we have a list of questions that are generic, like, you know, that will help us answer. And then we do that all, that's our very first thing we do when we get to see the network owner, we start asking those questions. So those, in those cases, you would use those questions with the person who's reporting an incident. You can have a check, that can be in your checklist. Kind of like when you go to the doctor's office and they ask you, like, did you have the measles? Did you have all that? Yeah, all those questions to get that. Keep on going, Josh, so, like, keep on, what else do you got for us?
So some of the actions we talked about were, you know, it's Google Drive, looking at timestamps, looking at when documents were modified, who they were modified by, what IP addresses they were coming from, who was it inadvertently shared? Did somebody sit out at somebody's computer that was still logged in? We identified our roles based on the scenario. We have a superintendent, we have a principal, we have a tech director. We have a communications director here that's doing nothing, but. We didn't really get to what will we report because we were just, we kept throwing out all the hypotheticals.
There you go, that's
What
fine.
is this an event? Is this an incident? If I have to involve the police, then, you know, to us, it's more of an incident. So that's kind of.
There you go. Yes, just remember, so police, you could have it, that's a good thing that Josh brought up. It can be an incident with the police, but it might not be a data incident, so make sure, so that, so I don't know what you guys call things in your other part of school, whether there's a special toll when somebody, let's say, steals a laptop or something like that, what do you guys call that? Or it steals steals a statue, you know, something that has.
Say this could be a cybersecurity event.
Yeah.
School.
Well, so I would try to stay away from mixing terms, so do you guys have a term, so if somebody steals money out of the lunchroom, what is that called? What do you guys call that?
Not a good question for a bunch of
Yeah.
tech people.
Okay, all right, well, okay, so the thing is, just, but a cybersecurity incident has a definition where you think data has been stolen. And you don't know if it's 250 records or 1,000 records, but you believe it's a cybersecurity incident. Do you want to, we got George, Lisa, and Aaron. Do you want to pick your follow on or you want Deb to volunteer? George, Aaron, or Lisa, who would you like?
Oh. That way, I didn't.
The reason I'll do things like this in a seminar, if you're like that, and I already told you, I'm gonna be an interesting person for you, is when I run seminars, I always have individuals in there, because when you guys get in yours and in the FBI and the cybersecurity, you could have 3 different groups then you're in your nerd tech room working stuff, and they have to get along, where they, you know, so they don't get into silos. So I have people picking other people, so it's fun and exciting. Are you up, Lisa? We're just interested in where you're at and what you can.
Well, we blended on the 7th grade for multiplayer, but I teach track down. Get in trouble, but, yeah, I mean, that's, we were trying to figure out if it was an event or an incident. We didn't know what the graffiti was, we didn't know what the shared rights were on the.
So what do you think you're gonna tell the superintendent then?
Probably gonna tell them to have the music teacher not share out the folder with entity rights next time.
Okay, that's good, but are you, if the superintendent asks you if it's an event or an incident, what do you think
At
you're gonna?
this point, I think it's an incident.
Okay, now, in your whole team is all on board, all that? Okay, good, okay.
I'll just refine a little bit.
Uh-huh.
We said it was an event until we investigated.
Mhm.
So we needed to look at those sharing rights and what that teacher, who that teacher shared with, just like Josh said. And look at the version history, who had, made the changes, all the IPs, that kind of thing. And then if that was the case that a student did not do it, then we've got to drill down a little bit further, and we were gonna just disable the teacher's account. Because that's the first line of defense. And, you know, then, just to isolate that. And then we probably would have, you know, investigated a little more to see what the cybersecurity is.
There's nothing fair on the first day, all the way up the first day. If you sleep and you wake up the next day and you're still on the same site, things get to be a little bit better. First day, and you got superintendents already involved, principals are involved, people start asking you questions. And depending on what village you live in, what your district's like, some of you work for people who tend to like answers like right away. How many people have people who have bosses that their bosses like answers immediately? Yeah, I mean, I work for Colonel Baker, yeah, I mean, I have an answer, I sent you a text message. You got, yeah, we'll whop in 5 minutes, Charles, come on. You know, I mean, but the thing is that some of you work for people who are looking for answers right away. If you don't know if it's an incident or event, you say, I'm still researching, but can they put pressure on you? And the answer is obviously yes. Lisa, who else would you like to call? Do we like to call a person online? Do we have people online? Somebody online wants to, can they hear, can they talk?
They should be able to.
Yeah, would somebody online like to, tell us if we have an incident or event? Right. We have people online too.
So Frank already responded.
Yeah,
Oh, yes, we definitely need to hear from them.
yeah, can Frank talk to the group?
Yeah, are you guys able to hear me?
Yeah, we gotta listen to Frank.
So, I mean, what I wrote in chat, my first thought would be that I would lean toward incident just because it's a shared network drive. It would depend on who it's shared with, obviously, would be my first thought. Is it shared with, the entire class of students? Is it shared with other staff? Who's it shared with? And I would lean toward somebody who has access to the shared drive doing the graffiti, just based on assumptions. That would be the easiest way. So I would lean toward event and not incident, because I don't know if there's any adverse consequences to the IT system in this case. I would think that it would, I would start from the inside, who has access to the shared folder, and then work my way out from there.
Good plan. So the thing is, if you notice, if you're listening to each other, there's nothing fair about the first hour. There's nothing fair about the first 8 hours. There's nothing fair about the first day, because you went to work today thinking, I'm going to work today. And now all of a sudden you have a cyber something happen. This is like if you work for a fire department. So you will hear different groups answer questions differently based upon the logic that you're going to do. And I already talked about how Atlanta was in Augustine, Georgia. You listen to professionals, communication directors, and they're contradicting themselves the next day because the next day you got new information. It's just how you say it. So a good communications director, when they have to talk to the public and things like that, I like when I do my reports is I say there's a 70% chance that this server is infected. In other words, when we start looking at and mapping and we're looking at the systems and how it's affected, we start showing probability scores where we're leaning towards one thing or the other. Try to keep the superintendent and executives from forcing you into an early decision that they might communicate out into the community or to other people. Or maybe you feel like, hey, I can tell the executives at my school district, you're only going to find that out when you run the tabletops at your school district and say, if we tell you something is technology and we find out something new 2 hours later, did you already tell everybody in the world that first stuff, or did you just keep it confidential and it's developing? So some of the things in those first couple of hours, you're going to sit there and say, I think it's an event or I think it's an incident, but I heard every group say, I got to get more information. That was the common thread through there. And that's the way it's going to be. All right. So we go in and we'll see what we found. My computer reports. It really is going to work. This one works. There we go. So all we found that the music file was tampered with Wednesday evening, and the camera shows no intrusion in the music department. So we looked at the camera footage, and the music department changed their password. We have them do that. And the music program goes on Friday and Saturday evening without incident. So they had this incident over the weekend. Nothing happened that was new. And we did check the cameras to see if somebody had been, we're just doing some due diligence here. And we asked the music department to change their password. Okay, cool. All right, here we go. This is the next part. Okay, on Monday, so this would be October 30th at 6:40 a.m., local stations issue a fabricated announcement that the high school is closed. High school principal reports to the superintendent, who's putting pressure on the IT department, of course. wants to know if the two events, music files and the fabricated announcements are related, would like a report by the end of the day. You have 5 questions we look, what, is this occurrence a cybersecurity incident or event? What stage are we in? What actions will you implement and what will you report? And this time the communication director, because it happened, it has to have a prepared, at least short sentence. Because now we have parents involved and there was an announcement made to close the high school. Cool, that's good. Team leaders, they're all yours. I do know how the announcement system works, but I got educated on that. If I have the username and password, I can make any announcement. in any school. If you didn't know, you can make an announcement on, in most school districts in Ohio, all I gotta do is have the username and password, and it lets me in that system, and then I can make any announcement. If you didn't know about that.
Date and time for the first weekend.
It was Friday, this is Monday now.
Okay, this is Monday now, so.
So Saturday, Sunday, they had no incident at the music concert. And what they'll find out is sometimes things can happen, they're not related. All we know, Jerry, is that we're glad we're right now, and we are glad, or not glad they was that.
We gotta go to knowledge.
And honestly, sometimes you don't have any, somebody gives, but they have it now. It's in high school, on the net, and people are finding out right now. When they call you up, the technology director, you're like, I'm about.
Yeah, I just found out.
It's like, well, the typical day is IT world. I just found out myself, something down. Found out. Nobody told me.
Yeah, was the radio station or whatever. So in this case, what's our?
What's the?
Yeah. No, right now, no, right now. Communication director. Again, I think a lot of people. Mind in here, pretty much. There we go. I don't have to tell everything. That's right. We're investigating this. I was in the. Oh, no, we won't say that. So that's how these things. Feel like a tagline and so, you do it right.
So I, on my piece of paper, I always write down what time I let them go. Got 5 more minutes. How we doing over here? Good.
And we know what's going on.
That's the way it works. I was working with the other group here. So, somebody. Personnel and firefighters, stuff like that. The new person with somebody associated. And then also the other. And you think, well, why would I post it? And I don't think it's great anywhere. I'm gonna hit you, but I'm not gonna leave. The music group. I'm going to hit you with.
It's not gonna let you know. You can stop.
Right, so now you got everybody else. You don't have to be like an internal employee. Sometimes when you look at the spread. All the spread that you have, you might just pick which one.
I think so. Different reason. Oh, that was a different reason. Actually, he deleted his account because our lawyers. It's actually fine. And so. He got his Google account right now. And he walked in, there's a line. He restored his account. Now he is a person. We can go do it.
I got about 1 more minute. All right, people are kind of like pulling up together their answers. So we're going to start out with Aaron's group. we did Josh and Lisa, now we're over to Aaron, George, you're on deck. And we'll pick up somebody else online, maybe they wants to share. So we start with Aaron, then we'll go to George, and then whoever online wants to volunteer. So Aaron, what can you tell us?
So we said we're gonna continue to look into, the incident and try to figure out, maybe if we could find out who reported it to the station. So we know that reporting those, school closing emergencies, they have a username and a password or a special code over the phone. So find out what station reported this to. If they had any information on their end, they could give us, they could identify what station reported.
How many people here are technology directors? Raise your hand real high. You would not believe when I come or audit, we'll go in there and we'll say to the treasurer, the financial group admin assistant, or we go into the superintendent assistant and we'll say, write down all your, or this list, I don't want the passwords, but write down the passwords that you got for every, like how many accounts you have. Admin assistants, not just in school districts, but in cities, state governments, private enterprise, they have more passwords because the boss has to go to a meeting and says, hey, you need to do this, and they give them the password. And those passwords starts to get kind of like password crazy. So some admin assistants just keep it in their top drawer. You go pull up their right-hand drawer and there's all the passwords that are for get this, payroll, retirement. This is not like cheap passwords. These are the golden passwords to the whole system because they're in the front office. So when you're a technology director, you got to go in and start asking questions because big bosses are super busy, believe it or not. And so what they do is they have admins, and so they pass out. I understand the admin signs up for the payroll account passwords, but they share it with other people. There is password sharing going on in every organization in the world. Okay, so the thing is that I would look at those things too. Aaron, do you have anything else that your group wants to add?
We were gonna try to determine if anyone in the music department, just to see if there is a correlation, maybe has access to that information and permission to Kansas school, which we would assume they don't, but, just wanted to make that check to see if that is a possibility, whether it is actually someone in the department, but again, we would assume it's not, or a student has access now to their information, they're using it to facilitate.
So then a team leader, so the comm director got enough to go in and make a statement. If they have to make a statement, you should have a prepared statement. If the press asks you the same, I've had politicians say that if the press asks you a question, okay, you just like this, okay, what about it? Yeah, are we doing a cyber training today? Yeah, Cyber Reserve is coming to Buckeye Career Center. We're doing a cyber training today. That's it. Cyber Reserve is coming to Buckeye Career Center. We're doing cyber training today. Every time I watch one of these, the person who maybe isn't experienced, but watch the politicians how they do it. Write your answer or what you're going to say on a card. They ask you the question again. You can say, that's a great question, and then give them the same answer you gave before. Do not start to ad lib in front of the press in the United States. Does everybody know that? Do not. And so you might have somebody who gets picked by the superintendent and says, hey, Lisa, do you want to be the spokesperson for our school? And you're like, well, I have to because the other one's in Hawaii or whatever. If you do it, you can do it. The thing is, write what you're going to say, get it approved by the superintendent, and then just read it. Now, they will do follow-up questions. That's what they do. Watch the press conference someday. Say the same thing. Say the same thing. Do not. And if you watch the professionals out there, they do the same thing. Just stay on the narrative. Do not start talking about other things because what will happen is that's when they get you and you're doing all this and it just looks bad for the school district. So not that any of you are going to have to be a spokesperson, but you could have a person call you at home if there's a major incident and ask you a question. And just if you are doing an incident and it's your guys' teams at the school district, not to have you make a statement, then you need to write down what those exact words are going to be, like on your team, and give it out to your team and say, if somebody contacts you on the street going to your car, this is what you say. And they will ask you 2 times, 3 times, and you say the same thing every single time. They're trying to get a reaction out of you because it sells news. All right. George, what can you tell us?
If we determined it has something, somebody public knows something isn't right. Or you have to get all the powers that be together and say, what do we want our communications guy to convey? The other thing we talked about was, most systems like OneCall or whatnot have a 4-digit code for passwords. So how was that compromised? There's a correlation between the incident with the shared folder. Somebody, like was discussed, do they have the password stuck to their monitor? I mean, how did they get that? Determine, to get an idea of where you're at, because like, okay, they stored their password and say, share the music. Look at that, say, okay, now we might have correlation there. I still think before you say too much, the powers that be need to sit down. Okay, this is what we want the communications director to say. And you're right, you're talking about watching somebody on TV, every one of them, politicians, all generals, you ask them a question and right, the media tries to lead you down a hole that you really don't want to go down. They're trying to, be the one that gets the scoop.
Yep.
But pretty much that's what we were talking about. I think still needs, there's a lot of investigation.
It's good during an exercise, when you get a temple like this and you have somebody come in, we get to pick and choose as IT directors when we're running an exercise with questions to put in there. And you can see who's coming to your exercise. You can write questions in there that exercises, like if you have legal come, put a question in there that the legal person has to go in and participate. Think about who's at your exercise and make sure that there's questions in there for them on the tabletop. Hey, is there anybody online, Jerry, that wants to comment? They don't have to.
Is there anybody online that would like to comment on this particular incident or event?
If not, we'll start out with online first, next, this on the third one. And we'll see, so somebody.
No one's saying.
Okay, got it. And it's not like we want to put them on the spot, life is hard enough as it is. All right, so our third one is, or how we went back and did this. Program shows that the school district communication director account closed the high school at 6:30 a.m. So we know exactly what time the person did it at. Because that's an easy thing to see. The school messenger program password is now changed, so we changed that. Camera shows no intrusion in the communication director's office, who had access to that. All school district office staff have changed their password. So all of you who had that in your plan, kudos for that. Here comes our number 3 event. Number 3 event. We found Monday afternoon, the credit card company contacted the school district treasurer about a suspicious purchase made using a school credit card. Regaming laptops were bought on school district credit card number. Treasurer calls the superintendent who wants to, and you to their office wants any ideas on how to fix these problems. Superintendent needs your ideas as soon as possible. The question is, this continue to be an incident or event? What is the stage of the incident response plan are you in? What actions will you implement and what will you report? Now we have, they have access now the credit card. And they're buying toys, buying.
How long do you give it?
Oh, we get 10 minutes. 10 minutes. We got till 7:57 now, or.
Then before we leave, I'm gonna make sure I remind them about when the next one's scheduled.
What did it-
Thursday, December 14th.
Yes. Same time?
Yes, sir.
Same place?
Yes, sir. Figured it'll be easy, just keep them all here.
Get here.
They said it was like.
You can't. And you. I mean. There's. Take it from. That's one thing. It's a practice. Searching online.
It's like that, use the one chat or. So what I would do.
That's correct.
Our silver and it's right.
That's good. But there's, but then
So at that point.
Correct. Credit card. And we've gotten the bill. Yeah.
So the suspicion of the more suspicious thing here is the fact that
They only do it.
because the transfer is taking will go
Incorporate it into your race. I had to replace that. Not that bad, like, but I was bad at the time. I didn't get to six foot out of it. It's part of it's already been already started. Yeah. All kind of, so step one of the incident response process. All we're doing is these specifics to make the day, hour, I will tell you, day two. We're not. I mean, obviously. Everybody say we want to. If I had. Okay. Is this current site one extent or in the mid?
Yeah, but you. It's like the text.
I did. All right, we have anybody? We'll get, Josh, okay, getting to be almost lunchtime and you guys are probably getting hungry. Josh, your team, do you guys have anything to report? So we'll just do Josh and Lisa. Probably individuals online are already heading out to get something to eat. Whatever time you're doing this, so you know, if you're covering multiple things in a meeting, honestly, if you have this scenario and you say, Charles, send me some of these tabletops. Don't show it to your team ahead of time. Obviously, if you show them what all the scenarios are, that kind of like ruins the surprise. But if you can get through 3 of the 4, the 4th one, which I can show you a peek, is like where they catch the perpetrators and stuff like that. So there's really not a lot of excitement about that. But what do you got for us, Josh?
So we're leaning that it's more towards an event. But in the event that, you know, the treasurer's store credit card numbers in an Excel spreadsheet, the credit card company actually compromised, not the suspicion. Is it a procedural issue? Somebody checked out the card, didn't document anything, and made a purchase without anybody knowing. So we're kind of leaning more towards it's just an event, more likely a procedural issue. The bigger question is, why is a credit card company calling the school saying, hey, why are you ordering computers? Or actually, no.
Yeah, they did. They contacted them. It's just a suspicious. If it was me, you know, I'm on business, I would sit there. But I've been at professional companies where they contact you in their fraud division, where they see something suspicious.
We've got a lot of calls lately where, hey, your package is delayed, or hey, this purchase you made, so is it a phishing attempt?
Yeah, see, he's thinking that the fishers are out there that's doing that. So yeah, you want to make sure. Obviously, if you get called and they identify themselves as the fraud department for American Express, then you want to call. You say, hey, and then you want to call back, get their name, call them back. You say, I gotta, and because you just want to verify, do they really work? Just remember on this call phishing attack, say, oh, by the way, I gotta go, but give me your name and your extension, and then you call the number off of the American Express and see if you can get back to them. So, because like City of Hilliard with the $300,000 check, yeah, they convinced the Treasurer's Department that they were legit. I mean, because they were on the companies, they had a legit email, they had, you know, phone numbers and stuff like that. So they appeared were pretty darn legit. But if they would have ever called back the company and said, hey, are you really changing your direct deposit for your contractor account? Because that's what they did. And then they sent them the money. And then, of course, it was just fake. Cool. And then we got Lisa. Anything going exciting in your group?
Same thing. You know, however, you know, we would all that. and find out, where those were purchased. Let's see.
If then there wasn't a physical swipe, or was it?
Yep, good question.
Because if it was a swipe that GameStop down the street, that's different than if it was not by order, which put it out of the state or something. Yes, at first you gotta identify whether it's physical theft of the card or is it natural cyber.
So if money comes into issue, having a person from that department who trains with because IT might not know a lot about money, they know about endpoints, servers. So having a team that represents the whole school who can answer, because if it involves purchasing, a treasurer or finance office person, and the team diversity is only a help, it's not a hindrance. So most times treasurers are like, hey, so you're gonna have to figure out how to get other people on the school involved, including the coaches and stuff like that. So when you come up with your action plan, like Josh, Lisa, Aaron, and George, when you come up with your action plans, you need you say during this part of the incident, I need my team coaches that are out of elementary school to look at this. I need my team coach who's part of my team who works in the admin. So when we pull a network back up, they're checking stuff. But in this case, I need to find out, these list of questions. So each time these things happen, I notice each team generated a list of questions they wanted to do. You already have, because schools have multiple buildings, and you have these people who are your eyes and ears out there in the school. If you train them correctly, they are going to become invaluable because they are out of the elementary school. They know individuals. They know who has a sloppy this, sloppy that. Okay.
You do have someone on for me.
Yep. Okay. And who's online?
Frank responded again.
Yep. Frank. We're listening, Frank.
All right, I'm it's make it. So my first thought would be, yeah, I think somebody just mentioned, but is the credit card number stored in a file on the computer somewhere? Because if it were, all three of these could be associated together with a compromised account. You could have a somebody with access to the music folder. You would have somebody with an administration password to send out an alert, and then maybe had a credit card would be, if you had all three of those, that would be something that, you would think that an administrator would have. Even changing a username and password wouldn't necessarily fix that, because whoever did this act, if they got access to the system and downloaded important files that they found inside of a shared drive, they would still have access to the credit cards and whatever else was on that system.
So the only thing that's weird on this one that Frank's alluded to is that you were doing really well in a school year, and all of a sudden Friday and Monday evening, all of a sudden your system's being messed with. So you're under some sort of vector. Not exactly sure what it is yet. So when we had this one where like this, and once we get up to Tuesday, and then I'm gonna let you guys go. It's Monday afternoon, the credit card, let's see, I don't know if I went the right way. Going the wrong way. Be good if I hit the right button. So on stop 4, a student who hacked, oops. So my fourth one, and then I always put 4 into these when the cyber reservists are helping me write these. Wednesday, a student who hacked the admin account turns himself in when his cousin uses the legal access to purchase 3. So usually, so when we were over here with Aaron's group, we were talking about, does this look like international ransomware attack? Does it look like a insider threat with a disgruntled employee? Or does it look like you got some students that got some information in the front office and are working the system? Anything you can do to go in and start doing that, but more importantly than the exercise, because every time I send out an exercise to a school district or a city or whatever, and they're practicing, we always mix it up to make sure that every time the team practices, they don't get the same scenarios the next time that they practice. That way the team starts to develop that level of calmness that is required to make the correct decisions. Let's say we had a play actor in here who's like a shouter or like, hey, we got to get this fixed and all that stuff like that. They do that with the cyber reserve to put those play actors into events. I don't like it. I mean, but I understand why they do it. And so, if you wanted to do it at your school and have one of the treasurer come in, sit there and say, and they walk in, during the play acting, they'll say to the technology director, like, hey, you gotta have this fixed by this afternoon or you're done. They just do that so the IT team and the cyber response team learns to operate calmly, even if somebody comes and does a distraction. You'll notice the same thing with the FBI teams, very calm, very calculated. They did, I'm not saying they're not in a hurry, but boy, they seem like they're very, just doing their job. So when you summarize, you should do an incident. So what I would look for after this is, I talked about it, I would look for a memo in your file that said that you've been through an incident response tabletop exercise. It meets the requirement, the annual requirement. And that's a big thing. And so if you did this and this was your team, then you would say, hey, I'm going to do this. Now, when you go back, I'm going to do it again next year. Or you discuss with your team, how often do we want to practice? Now, not all your school is here. So if you can schedule one, let's say in May or June, or in the springtime, if you want to invite the cyber reserve to come and run it, the scenario for you, that's like that. But you write down in your report what was it that we did, what did we do right, what were challenges, and what things in our plan we need to fix. And then we go in and we update our plan. Right now, we just started writing our plan today. A question came into Jerry. It's like, how long does it take to write an incident response plan? It takes it until you have a template you're working right now. So officially, you have a draft incident response plan. Once you get out of draft mode, you need to show it to your treasurer and superintendent and the key individuals that already have things like your DRP, your business continuity plan. And so, and then you have to kind of like tell people, hey, this is what I'm doing. And complete your plan. No IR plan is really 100% complete. You're always in updating things in it. Do a tabletop several times a year if you can. Everybody's on a tight schedule. You're only required to do it annually. Most people, this is their very first one they did. Use the same format. Once you get to the point where you're done with tabletops and you're actually going to go in and say, here's a server, it's messed up. So you on a weekend, hey Charles, let's go mess up a server. And then we mess up a server. Now I really got the system running, but we convinced them that, hey, the server's messed up. And so we actually go in. That's almost like the cyber reserve. We mess up some part of the system on purpose. And then we see how the team actually does the work. So eventually you want to gravitate away from tabletops into real exercises where you've probably seen like medic urgent care do it. They have a local airport and they just do a made up aircraft accident, and then they have all the different people practicing. Those are real big. I'm not saying we're going to do that, but the thing is that if you go in and you get from tabletops to where you do something that actually has physical, something where you practice, something that's a little bit more real. Any questions on tabletops? Everybody's hungry for lunch. It was really great to meet you. I will go in and put your, Jerry will send me a list of all the schools that were in attendance, and we'll go ahead and start your gap analysis sheet and put in all the training you completed today. You will have a cyber reservist before they sign, that will check to make sure, that day when they come to your school district, they'll ask you to open up your incident response plan, and they'll just check just a couple areas, make sure you have your team roles in there, make sure you have your key data vendors listed with their key names, those vendors names and their phone numbers. Other than that, it was great meeting you. I think Jerry's got a couple announcements.
I was just gonna tell you guys that the next one is scheduled for Thursday, December 14th, same location, same time. That'll be the second seminar, which is the Risk Management Guide Tools and Assessment Seminar, with Charles and his team as well.
We're good. Off to lunch. I'm gonna be here for a while, so if you have questions, I'll be available. Other than that, it was great to meet you. See you next time.